Chapter 4067. The man's palm was scorching hot. Tang Beiyuan looked sideways at him. Lang Lixian's face was cold and stern. He said in a deep voice, "Since the Overlord has come, there is no need to follow." Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips and looked up at Lang Lixian. "Oh, then can you let go?" Listening to the woman's cold voice, Lang Lixian frowned in discomfort. "Yuan, He called out Tang Beiyuan's name, but he didn't know what to say. There was a moment of silence. Tang Beiyuan didn't wait for the man to continue. She moved her hand and broke free from the man's restraint. "If there's nothing else, please move aside." "Why are you angry?" Lang Lixian didn't let go. He pulled her in front of him and their eyes met. "What have I done wrong? You should tell me." "Hey." Tang Beiyuan's smile was a little cold and her eyes were a little sore. "You didn't do anything wrong. It's all my fault, so please let go of me. Stop messing around, okay?" Lang Lixian somewhat helplessly pressed his eyebrows. "It's not easy for us to go on a mission together. Good, okay?" Tears welled up in Tang Beiyuan's eyes. Her eyelashes were slightly wet. He also knew. Wasn't it rare for them to be on a mission together? He also knew that they could only be together for a long time when they were on a mission together. He actually knew everything. Tang Beiyuan closed her eyes and said weakly, "I don't want to mess around. I'm really tired. Let go of me. I want to go back to my room and rest." "All right." Lang Lixian didn't hesitate and responded in a calm voice. As he spoke, he loosened his grip. The moment the scorching hot hand left his wrist, Tang Beiyuan's heart felt as if it had been pierced by a needle. The pain was unbearable. She clenched her fists and suppressed the surging emotions in her heart. He was about to turn around and leave. The next moment, her body felt light. She had already fallen into a broad embrace. She was startled and her body stiffened. Above her head, the man's deep and solemn voice floated down. "If you're tired, lie in my arms and rest for a while. I'll send you back to your room." Lang Lixian carried her and walked step by step towards Tang Beiyuan's room. His steps were steady. Tang Beiyuan didn't feel uncomfortable at all when she was nestled in his arms. Her eyelashes fluttered. He looked up at Lang Lixian's chin. He stared for a long time. Finally, she closed her eyes and buried her head in his chest. Treasures Exchange Hall. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had just arrived. He saw Pei Sheng and the others rushing out of the treasure-gathering hall. Lao Lai was still shouting from behind, "Close the door of the treasure-gathering hall first." However, no one paid attention to old Lai. The group of people rushed forward impatiently with anxious expressions. Even when it swept past Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian, they didn't notice it at all. Instead, it was the expressionless Gui Wu who was following behind Pei Sheng. His eyes moved slightly as his gaze swept past Yiqing Luo and stopped in his tracks. "Sister." Kitty Li caught a whiff of Yiqing Luo's scent, and on seeing the young lady standing not too far away, she was looking at her with a light smile. His entire body almost flew over and rushed into Yiqing Luo's arms. The kitten's eyes were wet with tears. Her hands hugged Yiqing Luo tightly as her voice trembled. "Sister, you're finally back. You're finally back. I thought, you really didn't want me anymore." Chapter 4068. Because of Kitty Li's cry, the two people who were still rushing ahead stopped in their tracks. Pei Sheng turned back and saw the young lady who was tightly hugged by Kitty Li. A look of joy appeared in his eyes. He rushed over and stood in front of Yiqing Luo, looking her up and down with excitement. "Ah, Luo, you're all right, you're back." Yiqing Luo smiled and nodded. "Yes, I'm fine, I'm back." Where have you been these few days? Why couldn't Kitty Li sense your presence?" Pei Sheng was so excited that he wanted to hug Yiqing Luo. But a cold gaze swept past him. His movements suddenly froze. That action of wanting to hug or not froze on the spot. Very funny. Everyone couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yiqing Luo took the initiative to lean over and gave him a gentle hug. The action was very fast and not considered close. But when Yiqing Luo had just pulled away from Pei Sheng, with one hand, he scooped her up and pressed her into his embrace. A somewhat cold gaze fell on her. Yiqing Luo smiled, circled his neck and directly kissed his face. "Be good." After a perfunctory stroke, Yiqing Luo looked at Pei Sheng. "I met with some accidents in the western cliff mountain. Xian accompanied me to recuperate these few days. Today I've recovered, so I came over to look for you." "Accidents? Then have you recovered?" Gu Zishi looked at Yiqing Luo worriedly. "I can take a look for you. I'm fine, really fine, don't worry. Xian is taking care of me, don't worry." Yiqing Luo shook her head. Gui Wu, who had been silent, stared at Yiqing Luo. A trace of admiration flashed past his dark eyes. This time the accident in the Western Cliff Mountain, on the contrary, made you advance to the next level. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned, her heart was slightly surprised. She didn't expect Gui Wu to be able to see the change in her aura. Gui Wu's strength, how strong was he exactly? Advanced to the next level? Luo advanced again? What accident did you meet in the Western Cliff Mountain? Pei Xing asked in surprise. It's very dangerous over there. If it weren't for Xian, I might have died there, let alone leveling up. So, don't even think about taking the risk. Yiqing Luo's warning destroyed Pei Xing's thoughts as she changed the topic with a smile. How long has it been? Why haven't you gone to the Heaven Realm? Later, old Master Huangfu will say that I'm not willing to let him go again. Pei Xing scratched his head. I'm just worried about you. So many things have happened, how can I go to the Heaven Realm with peace of mind? Now that I'm fine, you guys should get ready. Yiqing Luo walked towards the direction of the treasure-gathering exchange as she said, Go to your maternal grandfather in peace, don't worry about me. Pei Xing glanced at Gu Zishi. The excitement and joy on her face were gone. He lowered his head, and a dark golden flowing light faintly appeared. I want to stay in the land for a period of time. After that, I will go to the Huangfu family. For me? Yiqing Luo saw through Pei Xing's plan and couldn't help but laughed. What do you think will happen to me? Over at Mu Qiulan's side, she can't stir up any waves. Moreover, everyone is here, so you don't need to worry. Pei Xing pursed his lips tightly. He had been thinking for a very, very long time during the few days when Yiqing Luo disappeared. It was Yiqing Luo's arrival that changed his fate. It was Yiqing Luo who made him stand up again and pull himself together. Chapter 4069. He was now able to protect the Treasures Exchange Hall and live such a comfortable life. Everything was because of Yiqing Luo? If anything happened to Yiqing Luo, he would never be able to forgive himself. He had yet to repay Yiqing Luo's kindness, so how could he leave the Earth Realm in peace and head towards the Heaven Realm to search for his own future? Even if Pei Xing had grown up. However, the sentimentality in his bones could not be corrected in a short period of time. Yiqing Luo could tell what Pei Xing was thinking about with just one look. After Earth Realm's matters are settled, I will head over to Heaven Realm. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she laughed lightly. So you and Zishi go over there and wait for me first. Pei Xing's expression froze. He wanted to say something else. But Yiqing Luo was the first to speak. You guys go over first and make good use of this opportunity. After you've stabilized your footing in the Huangfu family, when I go to the Heaven Realm, you can take care of me, isn't that right? Yiqing Luo's words successfully blocked Pei Xing's words. Alright, since Luo has said so, don't think too much about it. Gu Zishi held onto Pei Xing's arm and said gently, If we really want to thank Luo, we can wait for Luo in the Heaven Realm. When Luo reaches the Heaven Realm, we can become her backing. Yes, that's what I mean. Yiqing Luo snapped her fingers. Whether I can do whatever I want in the Heaven Realm in the future depends on you. The minute Yiqing Luo's words came out, it made the surrounding few people couldn't help but burst out laughing. At the same time in the Qiao mansion, Qiao family had dismissed all the people from those forces. Even the few young ladies who followed Mu Qiulan were forcefully called as guards by Patriarch Qiao and thrown out of the Qiao mansion. After that, he ordered the servants to carry Mu Qiulan back to her room. Mu Qiulan's emotions were very abnormal. He kept hugging his head, screaming and struggling. After all, she was the Empyrean fairy of Shadowless City. When she went berserk, the servants of Qiao Manor were unable to get close to Mu Qiulan at all. Instead, they were severely wounded. In the end, it was Lang Lixian who came forward and directly struck Mu Qiulan with his palm. This palm strike did not knock Mu Qiulan out, but she had lost her strength and collapsed to the ground. Lang Lixian's stern face revealed a trace of astonishment. He was surprised that his palm strike had failed to knock Mu Qiulan unconscious. However, he did not think too much about it. He lifted Mu Qiulan up as if she was a piece of trash and threw her into her room. A hard lock locked the door tightly. Lang Lixian raised his hand. His palm was enveloped in a layer of dark force. That layer of profound energy followed Lang Lixian's hand, and slowly fell onto the lock. It formed a protective shield. Hallmaster Lang, go and take care of Hallmaster Tang first. I will have people look after this place. Qiao family head cupped his hands towards Lang Lixian. Lang Lixian was about to refuse. But just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, in his mind Tang Bian's face, which was clearly smiling but was filled with endless sorrow, appeared. There was a dull pain in her heart. He slowly clenched his fist. He looked at the tightly shut door, then looked at the lock that was shrouded in profound energy. Unless someone with a higher rank than him appeared. Only then could he open this door. Finally, he nodded and replied, "Then I'll have to trouble Patriarch Qiao." This was Lang Li Xian's first time, putting Mo Xian's instructions second. His heart was filled with thoughts of Tang Biyuan's face, and that smile at the corner of her mouth, that pierced his heart. But he did not know. Not long after he left for Tang Biyuan's courtyard, a wisp of black smoke slowly floated into the tightly shut door. Chapter 40-70. In the room, Mu Qiulan laid on the bed. Her entire body was in pain, making her body kept on trembling lightly. Her forehead was oozing with cold sweat. Because of the intense pain, her malevolent expression was distorted to the extreme. Her breathing was very heavy. That palm of Lang Li Xian just now could practically take her life. Her entire body was in so much pain that she wanted to faint directly. But she was very clear in her heart. She had no way to faint. Because in the West Cliff Mountain, that medicinal pill which I Ching Luo threw to her made her consciousness maintain a clear mind forever. Even if she slept, she would not be able to sleep peacefully, she believed. Even if she died now, perhaps they would clearly feel how they were dying bit by bit. Mu Qiulan's heart was filled with hatred. Suddenly, the entire room sunk into a kind of December day atmosphere. The bone-chilling cold made her entire body shiver. "You trash." An icy cold voice rang beside her ear. That voice was very pleasant to listen to, but it was wrapped in a deep chill. Hearing it made one shiver even though it wasn't cold. The moment that voice rang, Mu Qiulan, who was originally lying on the bed, almost unable to move, suddenly sat up straight, as her face was filled with terror as she looked in front. It was a sudden movement. Made her body, emitted an intense tearing pain. As though someone had dismantled it and then reassembled it back together. She was in so much pain that she was drenched in cold sweat as she panted heavily, but her gaze had always been looking in front. You. In the air, a wisp of black smoke faintly appeared. The smoke curled up as it revolved and floated. Gradually, a slender figure appeared indistinctly in the black smoke. The black smoke was thick, and that person's face could not be seen clearly. She could only faintly see under the black smoke. That person's eyes were like a venomous snake. Mu Qiulan's face was filled with terror as her hands clutched tightly onto the blanket beneath her. In the black smoke, the figure's lips curled into a cold smile as his voice was extremely sinister, helping you with all the details, arranging everything properly and actually managing things to such a state. "Tell me, are you a trash?" That person's tone was full of mockery and disdain. However, Mu Qiulan didn't dare to reveal the slightest bit of displeasure. She didn't have her usual lofty and unconvinced demeanor. She shrunk her neck and trembled uncontrollably. "I'm sorry. I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want to. In order for you to drive a wedge between God Monarch and that SL*T, he gave you the jade pendant. Now that the jade pendant is gone, their relationship has become even better." That person chuckled as he spoke of the things that Mu Qiulan had failed to accomplish. His tone was calm and it did not seem like he was questioning or blaming her at all. But this was the case. The more Mu Qiulan sensed the approaching danger. He wanted to explain, but his tongue was curled up in fright. His teeth were chattering and he couldn't utter a single word. "Idiot. You can't even recognize the real venerable sovereign, and you still treat an impostor as your true love. You're really stupid." Mentioning this, the man's tone was obviously a little more angry. She suddenly flicked her sleeve. The ball of black smoke swiftly attacked Mu Qiulan's direction. The smoke instantly wrapped around Mu Qiulan's neck. It lifted her up into the air. Mu Qiulan widened her eyes, begging for mercy in fright and unwillingness. That person sneered. As he laughed, the black smoke became thicker and thicker. Chapter 40-71. Hearing that he still had value. Mu Qiulan's eyes immediately shone with hope. As long as you let me go, I'm willing to do anything for you." As long as she was still useful. He wouldn't have killed her. She could still live. As long as she was alive, she would have a chance to make a comeback. Mu Qiulan was filled with hope. However, in front of him, shrouded in the black fog, he could vaguely see the corner of that person's lips curled up in that pair of sinister and mocking eyes. She realized something. But he didn't dare to think too deeply about it. In the next instant, That person had already approached with a sinister grin. It was accompanied by a gust of chilly air. You're a mysterious fairy after all? I believe that your death and Xiao Yulu's death will be enough for the palace of Ling Long to step in. So go to hell, the man smiled sinisterly. The dark mist shrouding Mu Qiulan tightened bit by bit. Mu Qiulan widened her eyes in terror, shaking her head desperately. But how could she have the strength to resist? How could he resist? His pupils dilated and his breathing stopped. Mu Qiulan could vaguely see a face slowly revealing itself amidst the thick fog. It was a face that was exquisitely beautiful and extremely young. However, when that face grinned at her, his facial features were stiff and unnatural. Treasures Exchange Hall. Under Yi Qing Luo's persuasion, Pei Sheng dismissed the idea of staying in the Earth domain. Immediately Yi Qing Luo urged them to make a move. Pei Sheng was confused. Do you need to be in such a hurry? How can I not be anxious? When old man Huangfu left, he instructed you to immediately head to the Heaven Realm after the first auction. How long has it been? Yi Qing Luo replied in a serious manner. In fact, he was worried that something would happen again and drag Pei Sheng down again. After all, if he stayed here for too long he would definitely die. Old Master Huangfu couldn't help but overthink things. On top of that, old man Huangfu was returning to the Huangfu clan ahead of time. Because of Huangfu Fengyan. Old Master Huangfu was filled with guilt towards Pei Sheng. He would definitely arrange everything for Pei Sheng in the Heaven Realm. If this dragged on any longer, it would only disrupt old Master Huangfu's plans. Before old man Huangfu left, he gave Pei Sheng a jade pendant. That jade pendant wasn't just a token of the Huangfu clan. It was also to open the passage to the Heaven Realm for Pei Sheng and Gu Zishi. Of course, this was his only chance. Clutching the jade pendant in his hand, Pei Sheng looked at Yi Qing Luo without blinking as he spoke seriously. I will definitely stand firm in the Heaven Realm. Zishi and I will wait for you in the Heavenly Realm. Yi Qing Luo nodded. I believe you can do it. I hope by then I can see your growth. He gave a few more instructions. Yi Qing Luo sent Pei Sheng and Gu Zishi to the Heaven Realm's passageway. The two figures disappeared along with the passage. Yi Qing Luo then retracted her gaze. She stretched her waist lazily and leaned into Diamo Shen's arms. Another two people are missing. We need to hurry, we also need to head to the Heaven Realm. As she spoke, she threw a bunch of keys in her hand to Lao Lai. Old Lai subconsciously caught the key and looked at Yi Qing Luo in puzzlement. Ah Sheng and Zishi have left, I'll leave the treasure gathering to you. Yi Qing Luo said it lightly. Old Lai immediately threw the keys in his hand to Gui Wu. I don't know anything and I'm going back to the Hell Palace. What's the use of this treasure gathering trading hall? He was a man from the Hell Palace. Chapter 4072. Are you silly? Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at him. If I were to hand over all the treasures to you, I wouldn't be at ease. Gui Wu glanced at the key that was thrown at him and dodged to the side. The key was about to fall to the ground. Lao Lai had no choice but to catch the key and hold it in his hand. Then what do you mean? With Treasure Gathering's current reputation, it's not worth it to close the shop. Yi Qing Luo said, moreover, the Treasure Gathering is Ah Sheng's blood and sweat, and is also Ah Sheng's obsession. To close it just like that. Although Ah Sheng won't say anything, but in his heart he will definitely feel upset. She paused for a moment and then continued, that's why I'm saying, this gathering of treasures for the sake of camaraderie and profit, can continue to operate. You definitely won't stay in the land for long. Who will care about the treasures that you leave behind? Lao Lai asked. Yi Qing Luo replied, isn't there still Qiao family? Qiao family? Let the Qiao family manage it? Wasn't this the same as giving the treasure exchange hall to the Qiao family? The key will belong to your underworld palace while the treasure gathering trading house will be managed by the Qiao family. Every month the underworld palace will split the profits, isn't that enough? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she looked at old Lai. Lao Lai's eyes widened. In other words, the Hell Palace and the Qiao family will work together? Under the situation of mutual restriction. Indeed, neither side dared to have any evil thoughts. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she smiled at old Lai. Don't tell me? Hell Palace doesn't want to earn some extra crystals? Old Lai, all right, he thought. Although the underworld palace did not lack crystal stones. If they didn't have any spar they could still go outside to fight for them. However, this share was the crystals that he had earned himself. What if he couldn't get it outside? He could still snatch his spar. Then it's decided happily. I'll discuss with Patriarch Qiao later. Yi Qing Luo clapped her hands as she made the final decision. Lao Lai had no objection at all. He happily put away the key. Gui Wu shot a glance at Yi Qing Luo. When do you plan to go to the heavenly realm? In the near future. Yi Qing Luo thought for a moment. Mu Qiulan's matter has come to an end and the impostor's matter has also been settled. Let's wait for the balance historian's side to completely confirm that the Earth domain will not suffer any sudden attacks from the Palace of Seclusion during this period of time. A completely different calmness and vicissitudes of life appeared on Gui Wu's cold and handsome face. He seemed to smile. It was a very shallow curve. You really treat the matters of the Earth domain as your own business. Yi Qing Luo shrugged her shoulders as she spread out her hands. No choice. Who asked me in Palace of Darkness to be mortal enemies? Palace of Darkness can't wait to kill me and I can't wait to kill them. This matter concerns Palace of Darkness, so of course I have to treat it seriously. Let's not talk about these things. Zomo's long and narrow almond-shaped eyes lifted, and he leaned over with a smile. The matter of the impostor has been resolved? What I'm more curious about is, who exactly is that impostor? As he spoke, he stroked his chin. To be able to imitate the venerable emperor so vividly. TSK, if it wasn't someone familiar, how could he imitate it? Yi Qing Luo took a look at Diamo Xian before shifting her vision onto Zhou Mo, who was smiling cheekily. I'm more curious than you to know who that impostor is. What? Didn't they say that the problem with the impostor was solved? You still don't know who that person is? Zhou Mo had an expression of disbelief. Yi Qing Luo spread out her hands. He was the one who settled it and refused to tell me who the person who impersonated him was. Chapter 4073. Zhou Mo had just finished his words. Gui Wu, Old Lai and the rest tacitly distanced themselves from him. Even Kitty Li shook her little ears and wagged her tail as she shrank behind Yi Qing Luo. Zhou Mo looked around and saw that the few of them had distanced themselves from him. He helplessly spread out his hands. What I asked isn't it what you want to know? Moreover, what I said was not the truth. The few of them stood a few steps further away. They shook their heads in unison. This was absolutely not what they wanted to know. Don't push the blame to them. Sai, you guys are too. Before he could finish his words, a cold gaze fell onto Zhou Mo. Diamo Xian's face was solemn and cold as he looked at Zhou Mo calmly. His gaze was like ice, very breathtaking. No matter how Zhou Mo ignored it, that gaze followed him like a shadow. Several breaths later, Zhou Mo raised his hand indicating his surrender. Fine, I won't ask any more, all right? Diamo Xian's cold gaze swept past him and retracted it. TSK. This makes me feel that there's something fishy going on. The sound was extremely soft. It was him who was mumbling. He hadn't finished mumbling. Zhou Mo suddenly let out a miserable, ah. His entire body flew out and crashed onto the ground. His limbs were facing the sky as he fell into a state of confusion. His mouth kept on howling, ouch, ouch. That tall man who stood beside the young lady slowly smoothed his sleeves. Purple clouds billowed as invisible profound waves surged. Damn. I can't even complain. Do you need to be so cruel? I'm in so much pain. Zhou Mo supported his waist as he stood up. No matter how he howled. The few people who were watching from the side all hid far away and did not pay attention to him at all. Zhou Mo pressed his chest with a pained look. You bunch of heartless people. Succumbing to the tyranny of the overlord. And little wild cat, I'm already injured to this extent and you don't even feel sorry for me. Kitty Li popped out her little head from behind Yi Qing Luo. You're courting death. Kitty won't accompany you. Kitty will stand with sister on brother-in-law's side. Zhou Mo. *CK. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. What should he do? Diamo Xian shot a glance at that handsome fox-like face which was now twisted into a ball as he sneered. Don't say anything that will affect the relationship between this lord and Lil Luo, in front of Lil Luo, I was just King kidding. Zhou Mo gritted his teeth. Even jokes won't do. Diamo Xian raised his eyes slightly, his vision fixed on him. His gaze swept over. Zhou Mo was instantly terrified. He shrank his neck and didn't say anything else. This farce had actually eased the atmosphere among the crowd quite a bit. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she looked at Zhou Mo, who was still holding onto her waist and pressing onto her chest while stretching out his hand towards Kitty Li, howling as a sliver of helplessness flashed past her eyes. It could be seen that Diamo Xian did not go all out. Zhou Mo didn't suffer any substantial injuries. It was just purposely howling there to attract the attention and concern of a certain cat. She didn't expose him. Instead, she raised her eyebrows and looked at the solemn man beside her. To be honest, she was also very curious. Who was the person who impersonated DMO Xian? To tell the truth, that impersonator impersonated DMO Xian. Some of his actions, mannerisms and tone were extremely similar. If it wasn't for the fact that she understood DMO Xian too well, between her and DMO Xian there was a kind of unknown connection. Chapter 4074. But DMO Xian didn't seem to want her to know who the other party was. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows. Could it be that Zomo's big mouth was right? What kind of unspeakable relationship did the impostor have with him? This thought had just surfaced in his mind. Her body was suddenly pulled by someone and she fell into the man's broad embrace. Her chin was clasped by the man's slender fingers. She lifted it up forcefully and locked eyes with him. His eyes, as deep as ink, seemed to gather in the vast rain. With a single glance, Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to be bewitched for a moment as she felt dizzy for a moment. This was a man's face. She really couldn't get tired of it, for the rest of her life. Every time he suddenly flirted with her like this, all of them were able to stir up her maiden heart. You don't believe me? DMO Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes, reflecting a dangerous message. He just swept a glance at Yiqing Luo's expression and he could tell what she was thinking about. Yiqing Luo blinked her long eyelashes. No. Do you want to know who the impostor is? His thin lips curled up. His smile was devilishly charming. It made Yiqing Luo's heart skip a few beats uncontrollably. Her lips felt dry. She coughed and shook her head. No. DMO Xian slowly loosened his grip on her, but he didn't let go completely. His thin lips curled up and he smiled devilishly. Since you don't want to, then I won't say it. Yiqing Luo? He had fallen for the honey trap again. At the end of the day, he still didn't want to ask about the impostor. He didn't want her to know. She could investigate it herself. Yiqing Luo's idea soon got the chance to execute. That was after treasure gathering and everyone had lunch. Yiqing Luo stayed in the treasure gathering to tidy up some of the more precious items. In case when Hell Palace and Xiao Palace worked together to manage the treasure gathering, there might be some disputes due to benefits. Seeing that Gui Wu, Old Lai and the others were gathering treasures, DMO Xian then left to settle some matters. Before he left, he specially tugged Yiqing Luo as he instructed seriously, I'll come pick you up 4 hours later. Stay in the treasure gathering obediently and don't go anywhere else, do you understand? His tone made it seem like he was treating her as a troublemaker. How was she a troublemaker? It was clearly trouble that came to find her, all right? She had always been obedient and never took the initiative to look for trouble, okay? Grievance. Yiqing Luo put on a sour face as she sent DMO Xian off and went back into the treasure house. Just before DMO Xian left for half an incense stick of time, Yiqing Luo was rummaging through the treasure's warehouse. Suddenly, he heard a few soft noises coming from the darkness. She was the only one in the warehouse. Gui Wu and the others were all in the hall calculating the accounts. How could there be other people in this warehouse? Yiqing Luo's expression congealed and her gaze turned sharp as she quietly approached the direction where the sound came from. Just as he approached, a purple streak of light flashed before his eyes. When he raised his head again, he could only vaguely see a slender figure disappearing before his eyes. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk as she looked around. He saw that nothing in the warehouse had been touched. She frowned and looked in the direction where the voice disappeared. He quickly caught up with her. That figure was obviously trying to seduce her. When she chased after him, the figure flashed again and disappeared before her eyes. Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter. Was this another trick from the secluded palace? Wasn't it over after making use of the King of Darkness the last time? Now, they came up with a new trick again. Chapter 4075. She stopped in her tracks, narrowed her eyes and scanned the surroundings, alertly releasing her perception. Suddenly her gaze paused. His line of sight was fixed on the purple figure standing under a huge banyan tree not too far away. His luxurious purple robe fluttered in the strong wind like rolling clouds. Especially, his face was peerless and extremely handsome. Just a glance was enough to make one sink into it. But after Yiqing Luo swept a glance, the expression on his face revealed a mocking smile that wasn't a smile. Her half-squinted eyes reflected a piercingly cold light. She retracted her vigilance, crossed her arms over her chest, and looked at that person with ridicule. That person slowly raised his head and met her gaze. Their eyes met. His peach blossom eyes that were as deep as an abyss seemed to be filled with a pool of spring water. His red lips curled upwards, with a hint of demonic charm. He stood on the branch and reached out a hand to her. His voice was deep and gorgeous, extremely sexy. "Little Luo, come here." Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. The frivolous smile at the corner of his mouth became even wider. She raised her eyebrows and smiled at him. The two of them stared at each other for a long time. The man retracted his hand and smiled helplessly. "As expected, I still can't fool you." Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. The man's sleeves fluttered as he flew down from the tree and landed in front of Yiqing Luo. That face, which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's, was reflected in Yiqing Luo's pupils from a close distance. "Do you like to pretend to be Ah Xian so much?" Yiqing Luo smiled faintly. The man lowered his eyes and looked deeply at the young girl in front of him. His eyes were filled with warmth. The look in his eyes made her very uncomfortable. Such a gaze. She really has guts. Dmo Xian looked at her. Just as Yiqing Luo's smile froze and was about to open her mouth to stop this kind of gaze, she heard the man's low and hoarse voice sound out, "If I can obtain your feelings, I really want to pretend to be him and continue pretending to be him." This kind of confession made Yiqing Luo stunned. What the hell was this? Was this man pretending to be Dmo Xian confessing to her? What kind of godly development was this? Yiqing Luo was stunned. The man looked at her stunned expression and couldn't help chuckling. "He really didn't tell you my identity." That he was definitely referring to Dmo Xian. "Who are you?" Yiqing Luo took a step back. The man's low and deep laughter was very magnetic. That voice was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's. However, the feeling was completely different. The man did not imitate Dmo Xian's expression and posture. He slowly stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo. His broad, slender palm was just about to land on Yiqing Luo's cheek. But Yiqing Luo turned her head away, avoiding his hand. The man only smiled, his eyes full of gentleness. "He doesn't want you to know my identity, so he must have his own plans." Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly as she felt that smile was inexplicably familiar. "Did we know each other?" The man was silent for a moment, then raised a gentle smile. His dark pupils, when he looked at Yiqing Luo, seemed to be condensed with starlight. "I'm already very happy that you can ask in this way." The man smiled lightly, that pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, curved into an arc bearing this face which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian, but made a completely different expression from Dmo Xian. This made Yiqing Luo feel very awkward. Although, when Dmo Xian faced her, he was also extremely gentle. Chapter 4076. However, the gentleness of the man in front of her came from his very bones. Such gentleness, such a smile, was very familiar. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly into a bundle. He glared at the man. The man stared at her until he couldn't help but chuckle, his chest heaving up and down. "You want to know my identity so badly?" Yiqing Luo's gaze was sharp as she replied simply, "Yes." "Is it because you're curious about me or because you're curious about my familiarity?" the man asked with a smile. Yiqing Luo shook her head, "Neither." The man, "Huh? Then why do you want to know who I am?" Yiqing Luo replied, "I'm just curious, how did you manage to impersonate Ah Xian? You and Ah Xian? What relationship do you have?" The man's smile froze on his face. He had to admit it. Yiqing Luo's sentence was really pricking his heart. He thought that Yiqing Luo was curious about him, so she wanted to know his identity, which was why she followed him here. But who would have thought Yiqing Luo was merely because of Dmo Xian? Because he was able to impersonate Dmo Xian and had an incomparable understanding of Dmo Xian, that was why she wanted to know his identity. The smile on the man's face gradually revealed some bitterness. He hung his head. Her long black hair cascaded down her back. It concealed the gloom in his eyes. After a long time, the man's slightly hoarse voice came from the hair. "You just need to remember that I like you. I won't hurt you. That's enough." After the man said this, his entire aura was a little weak. He clenched his hands into fists. He seemed nervous. His breathing was also slightly erratic. Furthermore, he swiftly raised his eyes and took a look at Yiqing Luo's expression before swiftly lowering his head. He looked like an innocent young man who had met someone he liked for the first time and felt shy after confessing. However, after all these actions, Yiqing Luo only felt that it was funny. The corners of her lips curled up into a mocking smile. "You like me? Won't hurt me? Should I help you recall?" 3 days ago, how did you lure me to the West Cliff Mountain? How did you let the vines bring me to the King of Darkness? The man's shy expression froze on his face. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, his face paled a little. He opened his mouth to explain. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly again, but there wasn't much emotion in her eyes. The grudge between King of Darkness and me as a member of the Palace of Darkness, you should be very clear about it. That day, if it wasn't for Ah Xian, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to stand here with my life. The man's throat tightened as if something was choking him. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and stopped the man from making a sound. She waved her hand and said calmly, I'm not blaming you. To me you are just a stranger. No, to be more precise, an enemy. So there's no need to show such a guilty expression. She paused for a moment. The expression on the man's face became more and more complicated, as if he had a lot to say. She chuckled softly, I just want to tell you, don't easily say things like you like me and won't hurt me. These kinds of words can only deceive yourself. There's no need to use them in front of me to gain my trust. I don't have the time to play the game of true love with you. So, if you don't intend to show your real face, there's no need to lure me here. Yi Qing Luo's vision swept across the surroundings. Chapter 4077. As the man listened to Yi Qing Luo's words, the expression on his face was extremely painful. As though he was hurt, his eyes were filled with endless pain. Wearing Dmo Xian's face showing such an expression, it indeed made Yi Qing Luo feel like she was out of a play. West Cliff Mountain. It's my fault. The man's deep voice was filled with pain as he spat out every single word from his thin lips. The two books by his side were clenched into fists, as though he was trying his best to restrain something. His voice turned hoarse and deep, but this time I really don't have any intention to hurt you. I just want to see you to tell you that I'm not trying to impersonate him. I just want you to look at me a little more. If other ladies heard these affectionate words, they would definitely be touched by these words. But Yi Qing Luo expressed that her heart wasn't moved at all. She didn't accept this kind of explanation. Using the guise of true love to impersonate someone else? Furthermore, using someone else's identity to deceive another lady? Thinking of Mu Qiulan, Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with ridicule. She tilted her head as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Her eyes were filled with ridicule and ridicule. The man's eyes were filled with raging waves, as though huge waves were surging in his eyes. Under the darkness, it was dyed with a patch of black fog. It was so thick that there was only a patch of extreme black. In a split second, an endless amount of thick black evil qi gathered around him. It kept on surging and wrapping around him. When she saw that patch of thick evil qi, Yi Qing Luo revealed a vigilant expression as she retreated a few steps and stared at him alertly. Had the true love card been played badly and he flew into a rage out of humiliation? But her alertness had just been raised. The next moment, the man in front of her seemed to have extinguished, and in a blink of an eye, he regained his previous warmth. He looked at Yi Qing Luo's vigilant expression as a glint of pain and hurt flashed past his eyes. Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, the man said hoarsely. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly as she looked at him indifferently. Don't go so far as to scare me. But, from the evil qi that was overflowing from his body and the action of quickly retracting the evil qi, in Yi Qing Luo's heart, a vague guess surfaced. He was still pondering over this conjecture. In her ear, the man's hoarse voice, with a slight urgency sounded, also interrupted her thoughts. I know that no matter what I say, you won't believe me with the identity of the gloomy palace. The man lowered his head, the shadows blocking his expression. While saying that I'm in love with you, I also know that you must be laughing at me in your heart, thinking that I'm dirty. In the end, there was a hint of self-mockery in his tone. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. He had almost confirmed a certain thought in his heart. She pursed her lips and deliberated for a moment before saying, to be honest, what you and the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City want to do has nothing to do with me. But, using Ah Xian's face and identity to tangle with the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City, I can't just sit back and watch. At the end of the day, it was because the person he was impersonating was Dmo Xian. His actions had affected Dmo Xian. Therefore, that was why she cared so much. The man's gaze dimmed a little. The next moment, the young lady's indifferent words shattered all the hope in his heart. Chapter 4078. Didn't care, because she didn't care about him. So she didn't care if he was dirty? The man chuckled softly. His laughter was full of bitterness. Especially looking for Yiqing Luo, he was really asking for trouble. He knew Yiqing Luo's character. But he still wanted to meet her alone, to tell her what was on his mind. Madam? Student Yiqing Luo. Little Qing Luo? Suddenly Gui Wu and the others called out from not far away. Those people's voices were obviously getting closer. The man's expression congealed as he raised his head and looked towards the direction of the voice. This was a corner not far from the treasure gathering. At the corner they might bump into the passers-by. It should be, the man's evil qi had attracted Gui Wu's perception. Plus, there was no sign of her in the warehouse. Therefore, following this evil yin qi, the few of them found their way here. As the footsteps got closer, the man's expression became more and more solemn. He took a look at Yiqing Luo, his thin lips pursed into a line. His hands, which were hanging by his side, slowly rose and curled up, making a defensive posture. Those three people came over. Plus Yiqing Luo. Today he would not be able to escape even if he had wings. But, just as the footsteps were nearing the corner, the young lady's clear voice suddenly rang. You guys go back to the treasure gathering first, I'm fine. The approaching footsteps stopped. After a few breaths of silence, Gui Wu's deep voice was heard. Are you sure? Yes, I'll go back immediately. Yiqing Luo replied. At the corner they could vaguely hear Old Lai and Gui Wu arguing, about to rush over. But they were forcibly dragged away by Gui Wu. The approaching footsteps and breathtaking aura gradually faded away. The man who was in an offensive and defensive posture stiffened slightly, until that aura completely disappeared. This time he moved his body, his eyes overflowed with joy. You don't want to kill me? Earlier he only needed Yiqing Luo's call. There was no way he could escape today. But Yiqing Luo let those people leave. Did this mean that in Yiqing Luo's heart he still had a place for him? Go. Yiqing Luo's eyes were calm, as if she didn't notice the man's eyes burning. The man's thin lips raised into a smile. With Dmo Xian's face, that smile was enough to topple cities. But Yiqing Luo's heart was still unperturbed. This time take it as me returning your favor. There's a next time. I won't be merciful. Yiqing Luo threw this sentence and turned around to leave. Behind her, the man's voice tightened as he murmured the word favor. You know who I am, to be able to control the evil qi in the palace of gloomy shadows. Other than you, I can't find a second person. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back as she walked past the corner and disappeared from the man's sight. At this moment, the man seemed to have lost all his support and fell to the ground. He stared blankly at Yiqing Luo's departing figure. Suddenly he chuckled. His wide palms covered his face, covering his reddened eyes, as well as the sparkles that were seeping out of his eyes. Ha! She finally recognized him. In the end, it had pushed the distance between the two of them even further. Yiqing Luo had only walked for tens of meters when she saw the three people standing in front waiting for her. Yiqing Luo went forward to welcome them. Chapter 4079. Yiqing Luo knew that these few people were concerned about her, so she didn't hide it, impersonating Xian's men. The Zhou Mo exploded at once. He pretended to be a venerable sovereign and caused so much trouble. Why didn't you seize the opportunity to catch him? Why did you let him go? He had long known that the person who met Yiqing Luo was an impostor. He should have rushed over. Of course, he didn't rush over to catch the impostor to avenge the venerable sovereign. She simply wanted to know who that person was, to satisfy his interest in gossiping. Yiqing Luo indifferently glanced at him, and from his expression, she knew what he was thinking in his heart. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes as she ignored him. Madam, you won't let us go over? Does it mean that you already know who the impostor is? Lao Lai also came over and asked nosily. Zhou Mo immediately pricked up his ears. But Yiqing Luo didn't give an answer to this question. He just walked straight towards the treasure trove. She lowered her eyes, and in her mind, she recalled that face, which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's, but the expression was entirely different. He sighed inwardly. Yes, she already knew the identity of the impostor. She had seen how smoothly he controlled the evil energy of the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo already had an answer in her heart. That person was indeed someone she had met before. It could be considered as a form of friendship. On the surface, the Palace Master of Netherworld Palace. On the surface, the Palace Master of Darkness Palace was in charge of everything. She had once been imprisoned in a secret base of the Dark Nether Palace in the Nirvana realm by the true mastermind behind the scenes. It was him who had told Dmo Xian about her whereabouts. Only then did Dmo Xian arrive in time. Therefore, just now I'll take it as returning him a favor. She had never thought that the person who impersonated Dmo Xian was the palace lord of the secluded palace on the surface. Why? Dmo Xian didn't want her to know the other party's true identity. It was because Dmo Xian also knew of his feelings for her? Was that why he didn't want to have too much contact with them? This shouldn't be the case. Dmo Xian should be very clear on how much she hated the Palace of Darkness. He definitely wouldn't be interested in or have a good impression of anyone from the Dark Nether Palace. She didn't even care about Zhu Wuxing. Not to mention the Palace Master of Twilight Palace on the surface. To be able to become the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace on the surface was enough to show that he had a close relationship with Gloomy Palace. The last time she had revealed her whereabouts to Dmo Xian. Can live until now. It also showed his position in the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. What exactly was Dmo Xian guarding against? He was puzzled. They had already returned to treasure gathering. Before he reached the entrance, he saw a large group of citizens gathered outside the treasure gathering hall. He could vaguely hear crackling sounds coming from the treasure trove. Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly as she exchanged glances with the few people beside her. A few of them quickly stepped forward. On seeing Yiqing Luo and the others, the surrounding citizens immediately opened their mouths. Madam D, everyone. Where are you going? Not good, people from Linglong Palace Hall are coming. Linglong Palace? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she placed her vision onto the main entrance of the Gathering Treasures Exchange. A few girls dressed in lotus green robes were walking around the treasure gathering hall. There were also 2 or 3 women dressed even more luxuriously, and they were constantly rummaging through the items in the treasure trove. It was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. Chapter 4080. Listening to the citizens' words. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Mu Qiulan was dead? Mu Qiulan was dead, so why did Linglong Palace's people come to the treasure gathering for? Could it be? And even blamed Mu Qiulan's death on her? As expected, the citizen's next sentence was, Madam Emperor, I don't know where the news came from, but without Embroiling City's mysterious maiden and Shadowless City's mysterious maiden were both killed by you. So this Linglong Palace is here to clarify with you if there's any misunderstanding. The citizen's words were very beautiful. But from the sound of things being flipped over in the treasure gathering hall, it totally didn't seem like they were here to clarify to avoid any misunderstanding. This Linglong Palace is really arrogant now, even daring to behave atrociously in my territory. Old Lai saw the treasure gathering being trampled, so how could he possibly keep his composure and listen to the citizen's explanation? He flicked his sleeves and rushed into the treasure gathering hall. Old Lai didn't hesitate as he rushed up with a punch, hammering down on that lady who was still pushing the table. That lady's reaction was extremely fast as she speedily took a step back. But she still staggered a few steps back from Old Lai's aftershock. That lady's face was instantly filled with anger as she raised her hand to strike back. This palm had yet to land on her. But she was stopped by a dignified voice, "Stop it." When the lady heard this voice, it was like a mouse seeing a cat as she was so frightened that she shrunk back. This angry shout made Yiqing Luo look towards the direction of the voice. She saw a lady around 30 years old sitting in the corner of the treasure gathering hall at the guest area. The lady's expression was grave and stern, not angry but imposing. Just by sitting there she gave off an extremely strong pressure. She stood up as she looked calmly at Old Lai. Her imposing aura might be useful against those 2 ladies from Linglong Palace, but, to Old Lai, it was totally useless. Old Lai turned his head and met the lady's gaze as he raised his head and sneered, "Yo, isn't this Linglong Palace's Grand Judicial Elder? What? You heard that I'm here at the treasure gathering hall, so you brought your men to wreck my place?" The lady frowned as she replied impatiently, "This elder's motive for coming here has nothing to do with Hell Palace." Unrelated? King destroyed my shop that I just got, and now you're telling me that it has nothing to do with me? Old Lai spat on the ground, pointed at the woman and cursed, "Great Judge, who was the one who smashed these things in the treasure gathering exchange house? Which hand and which leg did it? Either you chop off their arms and legs or I won't let you off." He was so domineering that he didn't even care that the person in front of him was a woman. Well, for Old Lai, gender was not important at all. More importantly, he was extremely displeased. The few people from Linglong Palace probably didn't expect that they would run over to question Yiqing Luo and capture her. However, it had been messed up by Old Lai from the Underworld Palace. If they took action against Old Lai, that was the entire Underworld Palace. It wasn't that the Linglong Palace was afraid of the Hell Palace. However, the Underworld Palace was simply too difficult to deal with. If it was possible, they wouldn't even want to look at the people from the Underworld Palace. The first judicial elder tried to suppress the anger in his heart and coldly said, "Old Lai, I advise you not to push your luck. I don't want to cause unnecessary trouble." Chapter 4081. Grand Judicial Elder took a deep breath. Linglong Palace will bear all the losses of the treasure exchange. So now, can you please invite Miss Yiqing Luo out? Just bear all the losses? Is this matter that simple? Old Lai was unforgiving. Then I'll bring my brothers from Hell Palace to your Linglong Palace for a while and then bear all the losses. Are you willing to do so? Grand Judicial Elder was apparently suppressing his anger, almost causing an internal injury as his features contorted. Old Lai snorted, "I've already made it clear, whoever smashed it, which hand, which leg touched the things in my shop. Punish yourself obediently, otherwise." Humph humph humph. The three ladies from Linglong Palace were so frightened that their faces turned pale, as they looked at Grand Judicial Elder pleadingly. Grand Judicial Elder naturally couldn't do anything to the people he brought along. If he really did something. If today's news were to spread. That Linglong Palace was afraid of Hell Palace, so they didn't hesitate to cripple their own disciple in order to protect Linglong Palace. If this kind of gossip were to spread. If Linglong Palace came to question Yiqing Luo, they would lose half of their imposing manner. Immediately, Grand Judicial Elder pounded the table. In that case, Hell Palace is determined to go against Linglong Palace? Don't King flatter me. Old Lai spat again. Do you still want to escalate the matter to two forces? Do you think I'm afraid? But you have to be clear, it's your Grand Judicial Elder who used Linglong Palace's name to declare war on Hell Palace. And not me representing Hell Palace to go against Linglong Palace. Old Lai's logical rebuttal made Grand Judicial Elder tremble non-stop. Old Lai gleefully winked at the crowd. Trying to go against Yiqing Luo in front of him? Old Lai could make Linglong Palace doubt their lives. Good. What a Hell Palace. Old Lai, I'll remember you. Grand Judicial Elder's hand trembled as he pointed at Old Lai, sneering. She flicked her sleeves in anger and led the few of them towards the entrance of the treasure exchange. Old Lai was still clamoring behind him. Don't forget about the loss of the treasure gathering. You're a dignified great judicial elder. Once you say something, you can't go back on your word. The first judicial elder stopped and clenched his fists. Then he stepped out of the door. The onlookers made way for them in unison. The great judicial elder gritted his teeth and strode forward. He had only taken a few steps. He then heard a clear and sweet voice. Linglong Palace's great judicial elder is looking for me. May I know what's the matter? There was a hint of laughter in that voice. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was very pleasant to hear. The great judicial elder immediately looked towards the source of the sound. The two pale-faced ladies from Linglong Palace stared at that direction as their voices quivered. It's Yiqing Luo. The great judicial elder narrowed his eyes and looked at the girl in front of him. The young girl was dressed in red and she was overflowing with youth. Her smile and frown flowed with a bewitching charm. She was smiling and her eyes were filled with smiles. However, under that sweet smile, the great judge felt an inexplicable sense of mockery. This thought made the great judicial elder's face sunk. Imperial Madam, you? Why are you? Old Lai pounded his own head when he saw Yiqing Luo walking out. He had finally managed to anger the people from Linglong Palace to leave. Why did Imperial Madam take the initiative to stand out? Chapter 4082. Old Lai's kindness. Yiqing Luo naturally knew about it. But even if Old Lai angered her away this time, there would be a next time. What's more, Linglong Palace's motive wasn't very clear. If they were really here for Mu Qiulan's death. If she didn't step forward to find out the exact situation. The scapegoat would always be on her. The great judicial elder looked at the figure who slowly walked out from the crowd. Her face was cold and gloomy. It turned out that this little girl had been outside the door from the very beginning. But she intentionally waited for Old Lai to make them unable to refute and left in anger before calling out to her. She had already stepped out of the door of the treasure gathering. The moment it started, Linglong Palace's imposing manner had been deprived by half. But even if she felt aggrieved, the great judicial elder still had to lead the few ladies back to the treasure gathering. Her gaze was like poison as she stared at Yiqing Luo. Her sharp gaze didn't make Yiqing Luo feel any discomfort. Yiqing Luo's thin lips curled up as she looked at her with a smile. That smile made the great judicial elder have a kind of chilling feeling. The great judicial elder pursed her lips as she stabilized her state of mind. She who had already lost most of her imposing manner could only choose the most direct. To ask, "Does Miss Yi know about Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's death?" "Yes." Yiqing Luo nodded. She had just answered when the great judicial elder's eyes flashed. Yiqing Luo continued, "Outside the treasure gathering, I roughly heard about what happened." The great judicial elder squinted her eyes. "Then what do you want to say?" "Nothing." Yiqing Luo replied indifferently. The great judicial elder's expression suddenly stiffened. "In that case, you admit that you killed Shadowless City's mysterious maiden?" "Admit?" Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she chuckled. "When did I admit it? Regarding the news of Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's death, you have nothing to say, isn't that a tacit admission?" The lady standing behind the great judicial elder frowned as her cold expression was filled with hostility. Immediately, she turned her head and whispered into the great judicial elder's ear, "Great judicial elder, this lady is extremely cunning. She's obviously playing dumb." His voice was not soft at all. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes with a smile which didn't look like a smile as she squinted at the young lady who interrupted them and sneered, "Hallmaster Ji, it's been a long time since we last met. Aren't you going to greet me when you see your savior?" The woman's body immediately stiffened. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows and looked at the grand judge. "Are the people from Linglong Palace so ungrateful?" That lady's face turned pale as she pointed at Yiqing Luo and stared at her furiously. His mouth moved, but he didn't know how to refute. Being criticized by a junior in such a haughty manner, the grand judge's face darkened. "What do you mean?" Yiqing Luo slowly picked up the chairs which had been kicked over from the ground as she spoke out slowly. "Don't tell me. The great judicial magistrate doesn't know that I had once saved the two of you, Hallmaster Ji and Hallmaster Lu? Weren't the ones who pushed the tables and smashed the items in the treasure gathering hall the escorts invited by the auction previously, Hallmaster Ji and Hallmaster Lu? Back then, as soon as the crisis of the auction was resolved, Xiao Yulu also died inside." Yiqing Luo didn't pay attention to these unimportant people and what happened next. These two hall masters also took advantage of the chaos to escape back to Linglong Palace. She had not expected. They actually followed the great judicial magistrate and ran over to Without Embroiling City. Chapter 4083. When the grand judge heard this, his sharp gaze immediately shot towards the two hall masters. From her attitude, Yiqing Luo knew that after these two hall masters returned to the Linglong Palace, they probably hadn't told the Linglong Palace about what happened in Without Embroiling City. Looking at how aggressive the Linglong Palace was when they came to gather treasures today, could it be that even Xiao Yulu's death was blamed on her? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as the smile on her lips deepened. "Great justice. It's best to first understand the situation clearly before coming over to denounce. Otherwise, if you become someone else's chess piece, wouldn't that be an insult to Linglong Palace?" The grand judge's expression gradually darkened. The gaze he shot towards Yiqing Luo was filled with a sliver of murderous intent. The aura that Xiao Qin emitted startled the two hall masters beside him. When they looked at each other, horror flashed in their eyes. Hall Master Ji raised her delicate eyebrows and pretended to be angry. She said sternly, "Stop trying to sow discord here. The great judicial elder naturally investigated this matter thoroughly. Do you dare to say that you didn't kill the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City?" Hall Master Lu immediately echoed, "The grand judicial elder has always been fair and impartial. He will never listen to your side of the story. Since we've come to treasure gathering grounds, then we have absolute proof. You're still trying to quibble." The two of them were afraid that the judiciary would investigate the matter of the auction, so they immediately shifted their focus to the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City. The grand judge's cold gaze swept over the two of them. In his eyes, there was a deep and dense cold light. However, in the end she did not criticize the two hall masters in front of others. But his vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. His expression was as cold as ice, and his eyes were sinister, as if he wanted to skin her alive. The Empyrean maiden of Shadowless City died in the Qiao family. According to the bystanders, the Qiao family head was ordered by you to lock her up in the room. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest. You still left out one person. Her voice paused for a moment and her smile deepened. She spat out 4 words one by one, Di Zun Di Ren. Locking Mu Qiulan in the Qiao family wasn't just Yi Qing Luo's idea. This was also Di Xian's intention. He even ordered 2 hall masters of the Emperor Palace to stand guard there. The Grand Magistrate deliberately did not mention Di Xian. They didn't want to provoke the Emperor Palace. But would Yi Qing Luo let her wish come true? You don't want to talk about it? I insist on bringing it up. When the words Overlord came out from Yi Qing Luo's mouth, the Grand Judge's face alternated between blue and white. He had not expected that Yi Qing Luo would not play her cards according to common sense. Generally speaking, which woman would be so bold as to bring out her man's name? Even if they wanted to bully others, they should have done it tactfully. Yi Qing Luo was laughing. She could hug her man's thigh anytime, anywhere. Not satisfied? Hold it in. She was just that cool and arrogant. Miss Yi, I only want to clarify the truth of the matter with you. If you continue to be so overbearing, I can't help but suspect that Miss Yi is feeling guilty. The Grand Judge could no longer hold back the anger that was surging in his heart. Yi Qing Luo totally disregarded the berserk imposing manner released by the Grand Judge. The ridiculing smile on her face grew even more. Ha! Does the Grand Judge treat me as a fool? Kicking chairs, flipping tables and flipping things the moment I come in? Is this called as trying to clarify the truth of the matter with me? Chapter 4084. The hostility in the eyes of the Grand Justice was so violent that it seemed like it was about to set off a storm. The ones who were even more furious were the few good-for-nothings behind her. Unable to accomplish anything, but only capable of ruining things. If it wasn't for the fact that they had pretended to overturn the entire store the minute they entered, they wouldn't have allowed Yi Qing Luo to use them as a talking point. It was also because of the actions of these pieces of trash. Their originally surging momentum was being suppressed to the point of being pushed back. From the very beginning, his attitude was like a punitive expedition. But now they were talking to each other in a friendly manner. For the sake of the Ling Long Palace's reputation, the Great Justice had to swallow his anger. She clenched her fists tightly and suppressed the raging anger in her chest. She said word by word, "This is indeed inappropriate and the Ling Long Palace will take responsibility for it. But before that, please answer my questions, Miss Yi." Yi Qing Luo curved her lips. "Great Judge, please ask." The Grand Judge asked, "Have you seen the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City today?" Yi Qing Luo replied, "Yes." The Great Judge, "How many times have you seen him?" Yi Qing Luo, "Once." "You're lying." Hall Master Lu's big round eyes stared angrily at Yi Qing Luo. "How could it be possible that we've only met once?" Then Hall Master Lu said, "How many times have I seen her?" Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she teased. Hall Master Lu sneered coldly. "Previously, under the watchful eyes of everyone, you saw the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City once. Then, you quietly entered the room where the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City was imprisoned and killed her." When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her curved lips started to smile bit by bit. Because of this smile, her beautiful face became even more charming. Almost all the onlookers were dazzled for an instant. "Hall Master Lu, for you to be so detailed, could it be that you saw it with your own eyes?" Hall Chief Lu's expression froze and he stammered, Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, but according to the evidence at the scene, it's you." "Evidence?" Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "What evidence?" Hall Master Lu seemed to have finally found his confidence. He quickly took out a scroll from his pocket. The scroll was unfurled. There was a jade pendant drawn on it. A red line. Below it was a jade bead that looked like an emerald. When he saw the jade pearl, his eyes widened. Yi Qing Luo's pupils unconsciously contracted. The few people from Ling Long Palace stared at Yi Qing Luo's expression without blinking. He noticed the change in her gaze. Hall Master Lu immediately asked, "Is the thing on the painting yours?" Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and touched her neck. Apart from the azure dew silk chain, the jade pendant that he had always worn around his neck was indeed no longer on his neck. Her actions had already verified that the item on the scroll was indeed Yi Qing Luo's. A proud smile appeared on Hall Master Lu's face. This jade pendant was found in the hands of the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City. It should be something that the Empyrean fairy of Shadowless City accidentally tore off from the murderer when she was struggling before her death. When he noticed that the jade pendant on his neck had disappeared, he immediately felt a chill run down his spine. Yi Qing Luo roughly understood. It seemed like someone was trying to frame her from behind. That jade pendant was from when she could not control the restlessness of the divine phoenix profound heart jade and did not obtain the heart-calming bead. The jade pendant that Dmo Xian had given her. It could temporarily suppress the restlessness of the divine phoenix profound heart jade. Later on, Dmo Xian specially left a strand of consciousness in the jade pendant and saved her life at the critical moment. After that, she had been hanging this jade pendant around her neck and had never taken it off. This jade pendant. When did it disappear? And it even appeared in Mu Qiulan's hands. Chapter 4085. Since Miss Yi has admitted that this jade pendant is indeed yours, then please cooperate with the Ling Long Palace's investigation. The Grand Judge glanced at the two hall masters. The two hall masters immediately went forward, one on the left and one on the right as they approached Yiqing Luo wanting to grab her. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly but had yet to move. Old Lai had already rushed forward and slapped one of them away. He stood in front of Yiqing Luo as he rolled up his sleeves and sneered, "I want to see who dares to touch her." "Old Lai, are you trying to interfere with the affairs of the Ling Long Palace?" The Grand Judge's face darkened. He was slapped in the face by Old Lai again and again. No matter how magnanimous she was, she couldn't bear it any longer. Old Lai's attack sent the two hall masters flying to the side. This was a slap to the face of the palace of Ling Long. "Don't use the Ling Long Palace Hall to suppress me. Do you think I'm afraid?" Old Lai sneered. The Grand Judge's eyes were filled with malice. His face was gloomy and frighteningly gloomy. The two of them looked like they were about to fight. Yiqing Luo patted Old Lai's shoulder as she pulled him to her side and shook her head at him. Then he looked up at the Grand Judge and said, "This jade pendant is indeed mine, but I don't know how it ended up in the hands of the mysterious fairy's corpse." "You still want to play dumb? It was clearly you who killed the Empyrean maiden of Shadowless City. You just want to provoke our Ling Long Hall." Hall Master Lu's seemingly adorable big eyes were filled with hatred. She was half lying on the ground, one hand pressed against her chest. Blood flowed from the corner of his lips. He was slapped by Old Lai. She couldn't be angry and had to endure it. Immediately, the anger in his heart was vented towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Hall Master Lu's words sounded so certain. "May I ask if you had personally witnessed me killing Shadowless City's mysterious young maiden?" She paused slightly and the smile on her face deepened. A cold arc of ridicule appeared in her long and narrow eyes. "Furthermore, the mysterious lady of Shadowless City is just a stray dog in my eyes. If I want to kill her, it'll be a piece of cake. Why would I need to be so secretive? Furthermore, your Ling Long Palace has nothing to do with me. I am someone who is afraid of trouble, so I can't be bothered to provoke your Ling Long Palace." Saying that, Yiqing Luo laughed lowly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. "If Hall Master Lu has persecutory delusion, you'd better go and get it treated, otherwise it will drag down Ling Long Palace's standard as a whole, making others feel that your Ling Long Palace's quality and the people are all extremely incompetent." Hall Master Lu was so infuriated by Yiqing Luo's words that his face flushed red. Yiqing Luo's words were impolite. He did not give any face to the Ling Long Palace. How could the great judge not hear the sarcasm in Yiqing Luo's words? As his face darkened and his tone became heavier, "Miss Yi, no matter if you killed Shadowless City's mysterious maiden or not, your jade pendant is at the crime scene, so you are the suspect. The mysterious lady of Shadowless City was nurtured by my Ling Long Palace Hall. I will take full responsibility for her death." What the great judge said makes a lot of sense. Yiqing Luo nodded in agreement. "My jade pendant is at the crime scene, so I indeed have to take responsibility." This rare cooperation made the great judge frown vigilantly. "What are you trying to do?" "Nothing much, just to cooperate with the great judge to find the real murderer behind this." Yiqing Luo replied with a smile. Chapter 4086. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened when she saw that the great judicial judge had yet to make a move. Her long and narrow eyes were curved, adding a touch of flirtatiousness to her beautiful face. "Great judicial judge elder doesn't seem to want me to cooperate?" The young lady raised her eyebrows meaningfully. She looked at the great judicial judge with some probing and ridicule. The great judicial judge elder's pupils shrank, his dark and gloomy eyes curled up his lips. "It's good that Miss Yi can cooperate." Yiqing Luo suddenly cooperated. She deliberately wanted to disturb her thoughts. Since Yiqing Luo had sent herself to the door, Then she wouldn't stand on ceremony. The great judicial judge elder's gaze moved. Hurry and invite Miss Yi to the Linglong Hall. The two hall masters climbed up from the ground and carefully looked at Old Lie's direction, then tensed up their emotions and approached Yi Qing Luo bit by bit. Just as the two of them were about to catch Yi Qing Luo, a clear and melodious laugh rang out. Wait! The two hall masters quivered and instantly froze on the spot. The great judicial judge elder's gaze sunk. What does Miss Yi mean? The young girl was still smiling at them. Her expression was calm, and there was even a meaningful smile at the corner of her mouth. Because my pendant was found at the scene of the crime, so, there is no problem with you being certain that I was the one who killed the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City. But, you don't have the most direct evidence to prove that I killed her. There's no witness, no physical evidence, no wound, and the way of her death is related to me. So, what are you trying to say? The great judicial judge frowned even tighter, his heart inexplicably raised. Yi Qing Luo smiled. So, I should personally prove that I'm not the murderer. How do you want to prove it? The great judicial judge asked. Yi Qing Luo replied, the crime scene. Her words just ended. Hall Master Ji's face darkened and quickly retorted, impossible. You're such a sinister and cunning villain. If I let you go to the crime scene, wouldn't it give you a chance to erase all traces related to you? Yi Qing Luo gave her a sarcastic glance. Long before you came to gather treasures to denounce me, you should have checked the entire house. Everyone's expression changed. It also verified that what Yi Qing Luo said was indeed not wrong. Yi Qing Luo laughed. I think in the entire room, other than the jade pendant in Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's hands, there shouldn't be any other clues, so why can't I go? Hall Master Ji was rendered speechless by Zhang Xian. The Grand Judge glanced at the citizens who kept poking their heads into the treasure-gathering hall, as well as the hall masters he had brought with him. She frowned and finally said, I promise you, I'll let you go to the scene to find evidence. Grand Judicial Elder, Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu looked at the Grand Judge anxiously, their faces filled with reluctance. The Grand Judge's eyes, which seemed to be soaked in ice, swept over the two of them. The two of them were so frightened that their faces turned pale. The Great Judge cast his icy-cold gaze onto Yi Qing Luo. But, if Miss Yi is unable to find any evidence at the scene that can prove your innocence, then, you must obediently follow me to the Linglong Palace Hall and accept their investigation. As the Great Judge spoke, the expressions of the few people beside Yi Qing Luo sunk. Chapter 4087. If Yi Qing Luo went to Linglong Hall, who knew what methods Linglong Palace would use to deal with Yi Qing Luo? No matter how strong Yi Qing Luo's ability was. However, the Linglong Palace was their territory after all. What if he was injured? What should he do then? The few of them had yet to speak. Yi Qing Luo had already opened her mouth as she smiled and nodded in response. No problem. Xiao Qing Luo. Zhou Mo tugged Yi Qing Luo's arm. Are you silly? Lao Lai's eyes widened. Even I can see that she said that on purpose. Why did you agree? Yi Qing Luo's brows were filled with a faint smile. She looked at the concerned and worried gazes directed at her. Her half-narrowed eyes curved as a trace of craftiness flashed through them. I didn't say that I would go to Linglong Palace alone. By then wouldn't it be better to drag Dmo Xian along? With Dmo Xian holding the fort. Why would he be afraid that Linglong Palace Hall would have any ill intentions? Furthermore, after the matter of Qiao Yulu and Mu Qiulan, the two Empyrean fairies, Yi Qing Luo felt that she had to make a trip to the Linglong Hall. She wanted to see what kind of existence the Linglong Palace was. And what sort of criteria did they use to select those Empyrean fairies? Zhou Mo and the others exchanged glances with one another and did not say anything else. Alright, they were overthinking things. How could Yi Qing Luo be bullied by others for no reason? It was already a blessing that she didn't bully others. The Grand Judge and the others didn't pay attention to their whispers. Seeing Yi Qing Luo agreeing to this request, a cold smile appeared on their faces. Vaguely there was a hint of viciousness. The group arrived at the Qiao mansion where Mu Qiulan was imprisoned. The entire courtyard was completely surrounded by the female disciples of the Linglong Palace. Even Patriarch Qiao was stopped at the entrance of the courtyard. There were also many people from the forces that were staying in the Qiao mansion, as well as people from the major forces that had heard the news and rushed over to watch the show. Patriarch Qiao's face was extremely unsightly. This was probably the first time Patriarch Qiao had encountered such a situation. In his own mansion he was intercepted by an outsider. He felt very aggrieved. But this matter implicated Yi Qingluo. In order to prevent complications, he had no choice but to endure. When Yi Qingluo, the great judicial judge, and the others came over, what they saw was such a lively scene. As soon as they saw the great judge and the others, an uproar broke out. The onlookers moved away one after another. Patriarch Qiao saw Yi Qingluo, who was walking right in front. Behind her, the two hall masters of the Linglong Palace were following her from both sides. Patriarch Qiao's expression immediately changed. He quickly walked forward and said, "Imperial Madam." Yi Qingluo gave him a comforting smile as she shook her head. "Patriarch Qiao, I'm so sorry. Because of me, I've implicated you. Luo, Xiaolong Palace. Moreover, the person who died was the Empyrean fairy trained by the Linglong Palace. Qingluo and Xiao Qingluo was Qing. Moreover, it would not only be the Linglong Palace, but the Muqilan clan would also be dissatisfied with Patriarch Qiao. Qingluo. Patriarch Qiao waved his hand. "Guiyu, that old man's eyesight is not wrong. My son's eyesight is not wrong either. Moreover, that mysterious maiden from Shadowless City deserves to die." Saying this, his eyes were filled with sarcasm as he shot a glance at the direction of the Grand Judge. Chapter 4088. Qiao family's patriarch was already full of complaints about the Linglong Palace. Actually, his daughter had never been as competitive as she was now. Although the sibling's mother had passed away early, and he was busy with the family's affairs, he did not discipline Xiao Yulu much. But children born in big families would have etiquette instructors since they were young. In addition, he was influenced by what he saw and heard. His personality wouldn't collapse no matter what. Take Qiao Yinyan for example. Although he was a little apathetic, his character was excellent. He never cared too much about his status or had any other ambitions. But Xiao Yulu, ever since she was chosen by the people of the Linglong Palace as a candidate for the Empyrean fairy, from the little sweetheart who knew nothing about the world, she became a competitive and vicious little devil. After that, his temper was out of control. By the time he realized it, his relationship with Xiao Yulu had become estranged, and he couldn't say anything intimate to her. In particular, he couldn't stand Xiao Yulu's actions. Every time he said a few words, Xiao Yulu would look impatient, or she would turn around and accuse him of not having the right to control her. In the end, he went straight to the Linglong Palace. Once he left, he didn't return for several years. They would occasionally meet, but they would always part on bad terms. The last time they met was when Xiao Yulu became the Empyrean fairy and returned to the clan. In family head Xiao's heart, he blamed himself for not teaching Xiao Yulu well in the past. He also hated the Linglong Palace for grooming his daughter into such a character. If not for the Linglong Palace, Xiao Yulu wouldn't have come to this. On top of that, Mu Qiulan, the mysterious lady of Shadowless City, also had such a strange personality. Patriarch Qiao could not help but suspect the Palace of Linglong's method of nurturing the Empyrean fairy. Especially now, the Linglong Palace Hall acted as if it was a matter of course. They wantonly arranged for the Linglong Palace Hall's people to enter the Qiao residence. Even the head of the Qiao residence was blocked from entering. Patriarch Qiao's words were obviously pointing at the Linglong Palace. The Grand Inquisitor's face sunk as he squinted at Patriarch Qiao but didn't say anything. Instead he looked towards Yi Qingluo and said calmly, "Miss Yi, go in." Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she patted family head Qiao's arm lightly, indicating for him to keep calm. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he slowly walked towards the courtyard. Zhou Mo and the others followed behind him. Before he could get close, he was stopped by the disciples of the Linglong Palace who were guarding the entrance. The death of the Empyrean fairy of Shadowless City still needs to be investigated. It is not advisable for too many people to enter the scene. Bah. Who knows if you will take the opportunity to lay your hands on my sister. You are a group of bad people, none of you have any good intentions. Kitty Li glared fiercely at the Grand Judge and reached out to push away the Linglong Palace disciple in front of her. Kitty. Yi Qingluo took a look at Kitty Li and swept a glance at her outstretched paw. "No matter, wait for me outside." Seeing that Yi Qingluo had opened her mouth, Kitty Li could only retract her hand angrily. Yi Qingluo stepped into the courtyard. The Grand Inquisitor followed closely behind. Kitty Li's eyes widened as she pointed at the Grand Inquisitor and said angrily, "Kitty knew you were up to no good. What do you want to do?" "Miss Yi is a suspect. If she enters the crime scene alone and destroys the evidence, then it's hard to explain," Hallmaster Ji said with a cold smile. Kitty Li was so angry that her cheeks puffed up. Yiqing Luo's eyes were calm as she shot a glance at Hallmaster Ji. Hallmaster Ji was so shocked that his face turned pale as he pursed his lips tightly. She then retracted her gaze and walked towards the direction where Mu Qiulan stayed. Chapter 4089. She pushed the door open. A wave of deathly stillness hit her in the face. Mu Qiulan had just died not more than 2 hours ago. But there wasn't much stench in the room. But the moment Yiqing Luo opened the door, she sensed an inexplicable chill. That kind of chill was a little like evil yin qi. But in the blink of an eye, it disappeared. It was as if what he had just felt was nothing more than an illusion. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she glanced sideways at the judicial officer standing behind her. The judicial officer's expression didn't change at all, as though he hadn't sensed anything amiss. Seeing Yiqing Luo's gaze, the judicial officer asked coldly, "Miss Yi, have you discovered something?" Yiqing Luo carefully sized up the judicial officer again. The judicial officer indeed didn't seem to have sensed the gust of yin qi earlier. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze and shook her head as she turned her attention back to the room. It was afternoon and there was plenty of light. But there was a white candle lit in the room and the flame was flickering. The faintly swaying shadows made the entire room look a little more gloomy. Yiqing Luo walked slowly. Her gaze wandered around. She walked all the way to the inner hall, which was the sleeping room. Mu Qiulan was lying on the bed, but her legs were slightly bent and stretched out by the side of the bed. She was lying on her back and the posture of her arms was twisted. Yiqing Luo saw the piece of jade pendant in Mu Qiulan's hand. The emerald green jade pendant was sparkling with a sparkling light. Yiqing Luo walked forward and stretched out her hand to pick up the jade pendant. The judicial officer's sleeves moved and an invisible profound energy stopped Yiqing Luo's hand. "What are you trying to do?" "Dirty." Yiqing Luo shot a glance at the judicial officer and took a step back. "This jade pendant was given to me by Xian. If she touches it, it will be dirty." Following that, she said indifferently, "This jade pendant is merely a tool to draw your attention to me. Now that I'm standing here, this thing should be returned to its rightful owner, right?" "You mean someone is using this jade pendant to frame you?" The judicial officer's eyes were filled with ridicule. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. "It doesn't matter if you believe it or not, I don't care. But if someone really framed me, then your Linglong Palace is merely a chess piece in their hands." The grand judge pursed his lips and did not speak again. A pair of gloomy eyes flickered with a cold light under the flickering candlelight. Yiqing Luo chuckled as she stepped aside. "Grand Judicial Magistrate doesn't trust me, so I'll have to trouble Grand Judicial Magistrate to bring the jade pendant over personally." The grand judge's face darkened and he didn't say a word. "I'm sure Xian wouldn't wish for the thing he gave me to be in the hands of a corpse. For such a long time, right?" Yiqing Luo wasn't in a hurry as she shot a glance at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. The grand judge's face twitched. He suppressed his anger and sneered. Then he strode toward Mu Qiulan. He bent down and took out the jade pendant. The jade pendant felt cold in his hand. The raging anger in his chest seemed to be soothed by this cold feeling. She clenched the jade pendant tightly as her gaze swept up and down. After confirming that there wasn't any unknown aura or clues on the jade pendant, he then threw it to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and caught the jade pendant. She took out a handkerchief and wrapped the jade pendant before putting it into the azure dew bracelet. Chapter 4090. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about the grand judge as she walked directly towards Mu Qiulan's corpse. Mu Qiulan died in agony. His entire face was contorted. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed like he was killed by an enemy, making people die so painfully. He must hate her to the core. In everyone's eyes, Yiqing Luo indeed should hate Mu Qiulan. After all, Mu Qiulan and Yiqing Luo were fighting for the overlord. Yiqing Luo knew why Mu Qiulan revealed such a painful and twisted expression right before she died. Because, in order to prevent Mu Qiulan from being controlled by the evil yin energy in the West Cliff Mountain, he had taken the initiative to do so. The medicinal pill she gave to Mu Qiulan was able to maintain her consciousness, allowing her to remain clear-headed. The time limit is long. He had to take the antidote. In a state of extreme lucidity. His life had been ended in such a painful manner. Mu Qiulan's death was indeed quite painful. Yiqing Luo touched her chin. Well, this was indeed her fault. Then she looked at Mu Qiulan's corpse for a moment. Coming to the crime scene, Yiqing Luo indeed didn't have much hope. After all, when the people from the Linglong Palace rushed to the treasures exchange hall, He would definitely investigate the house from top to bottom. One of the reasons why she came was to retrieve the jade pendant which DMO Xian had given her. Secondly, he wanted to see if he could find anything special on Mu Qiulan's corpse. Seeing Yiqing Luo staring at the corpse motionlessly, the Grand Judge frowned and said coldly, "What? Did you find any clues?" "I didn't manage to find any clues, but I did see. Your mysterious maiden's death was indeed not a pretty sight to behold," Yiqing Luo replied. "Great Judge." Facing Yiqing Luo, she must maintain her composure. With a sullen face, she sneered and said, "Are you going to keep watching?" "Yes, of course." Yiqing Luo stood by the bed, raised the corner of her eyes and glanced sideways at the Grand Magistrate. She smiled teasingly. "Is the Grand Magistrate worried that I might notice something? Why are you so impatient? Don't think that this elder doesn't know that you're trying to stall for time." The Grand Judge's eyes were also very cold. "You just need to stall for time. This elder has plenty of time." Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. This judge hated her quite a lot. She was too lazy to argue with the Grand Inquisitor and continued to look around the corpse. He did not miss a single detail. Suddenly, in her mind, Old Man Song's voice sounded, "Hold on, Luo lass, I sensed a different aura from the jade pendant you just threw in." Yiqing Luo was stunned. "What do you mean?" "There's no trace of Mu Qiulan's aura on the jade pendant. It's likely that it was placed in her hands after her death." Old Man Song said, "On the jade pendant, this old man sensed a very faint but very clear evil aura. Evil yin qi. Was it the same as the yin qi that she had sensed when she had just pushed open the door?" Old Man Song said, "I'm afraid this is something done by Dark Shadow Palace again. If I'm not wrong, Dark Shadow Palace is planning to use Linglong Palace to detain you in the land domain." To detain her in the earth domain? Could it be? Was the secluded Darkness Palace preparing to attack the Heaven Realm? Heavenly Realm. No matter how powerful the person behind the scenes of the Gloomy Palace was, he would not be able to escape. They probably wouldn't dare to challenge the entire Heaven Realm, right? If he angered the public, the people of the Heaven Realm united. How could the Palace of Gloomy Darkness have a chance to breathe? The Heaven Realm wasn't like Nirvana Realm or the land domain which was easy to deal with. Would the Palace of Gloomy Darkness take such a huge risk? Chapter 4091. This thought made Yiqing Luo's expression turn grave. Before coming here, she had more or less linked Mu Qiulan's death to the Palace of Umbra. But he also felt that it should be impossible. After all, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness had suffered heavy losses during the auction. It even attracted the attention and investigation of the Heavenly Law historian. In a short period of time, if they made any big moves, it would be pushing the Dark Abyss Palace to the surface. Unless there was something wrong with the secluded Darkness Palace's brain, they wouldn't do that. But now, the evil qi on the jade pendant had already proved that this matter was definitely related to the Dark Palace. The goal of the Gloomy Palace was obviously to use the Linglong Hall to restrain her. Then the reason for restraining her, what is it? Could it be that it was really as she thought? "Miss Yi, have you thought of something?" The great judge had been staring at Yiqing Luo's face, and when he saw her suddenly congealed expression, he immediately asked. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as she restrained the deep thoughts in her eyes and raised her head to look at the Grand Judge. "No. No." The great judge frowned slightly. From Yiqing Luo's expression, it didn't seem like she hadn't discovered anything. The Grand Judge glanced at Mu Qiulan's body and said in a deep voice, "Miss Yi, you have to understand that if you can't find any evidence to prove your innocence, you will be the prime suspect." Yiqing Luo raised her brows. "I'm clear I indeed didn't discover anything." The Grand Judge furrowed his brows even tighter. Somehow she felt that Yiqing Luo was hiding something from her. This feeling of being kept in the dark made her feel that Yiqing Luo didn't put her in her eyes at all. Since there's nothing to be found, then, as a suspect in the murder of Shadowless City's mysterious fairy, can Lady Yi follow me back to Linglong Palace? The Grand Judge's expression darkened and his voice deepened. Yiqing Luo was very cooperative this time as she spread out her hands and shrugged. "All right." The Grand Judge's words were blocked by the word "good." She coughed violently, and her face turned red with anger. With a flick of her sleeves, she turned around and walked towards the door. Yiqing Luo took another look at Mu Qiulan's corpse as her vision swept around the surroundings. Only then did he follow the great judge out of the room. As soon as the two walked out of the room, Patriarch Qiao, who was standing outside the courtyard, asked, "How is it? Did you find any evidence?" Yiqing Luo shook her head. The surrounding spectators sighed, and then they looked at each other and were extremely shocked. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu, who were standing at the door, were overjoyed. You didn't find any evidence? Miss Yi, since that's the case, don't forget what you promised us. What conditions? Qiao family head did not know. Hall Mistress Ji's cold and charming red lips curled upwards, looking sexy and mature as she stared at Yiqing Luo, like a rooster who had won a battle, arrogantly and complacently. Miss Yi has said it herself, if she is unable to prove her innocence, she will be treated as a suspect and follow us to Linglong Hall for investigation. Patriarch Qiao's face froze. Almost reflexively, he was already standing in front of Yiqing Luo. He glared fiercely at the people in front of him. I would like to see how you are going to take away the guests of my Qiao family. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu's expressions instantly darkened. What does Patriarch Qiao mean by this? Patriarch Qiao's expression was solemn as he was about to open his mouth. A fair little hand gently pressed on his shoulder. Chapter 4092. Patriarch Qiao, there's no need to get angry. If your health is affected because of me, Yin Yan will find trouble with me. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she appeased Patriarch Qiao. Patriarch Qiao's anger gradually subsided as his expression was still solemn. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's death is absolutely unrelated to you. Linglong Palace is obviously trying to pin the hat on you. Yiqing Luo smiled as she shook her head. After all, they found my things next to Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's corpse, so it's normal to suspect me. Seeing Yiqing Luo speaking up for Linglong Palace, Hall Master Ji's self-confidence started to swell again. In Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu's eyes, Yiqing Luo's attitude changed after leaving the crime scene was because she didn't find any evidence to prove her innocence, so she was feeling guilty. So she tried to please Linglong Palace in every possible way. Since Miss Yi is so understanding, then it's easy to settle. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu exchanged glances as they walked towards Yiqing Luo. This is the condition that Miss Yi personally agreed to, our Grand Judicial Elder. Since you're unable to prove your innocence, then follow us to Linglong Palace. The two Hall Masters stood on the left and right as they raised their hands towards Yiqing Luo's shoulders. Wait. A low and dignified voice that seemed to carry endless pressure came from it. The moment this voice was heard, the two Hall Masters instantly froze on the spot. From Old Lai's side, a young man dressed in a black brocade robe walked out. That slightly immature face was around 20 years old. But the imposing manner emitted from him, and that pair of eyes which made one feel pressure, it was extremely incompatible with that face. The minute the Grand Judicial Elder saw that young man, his expression changed slightly. Linglong Palace keeps saying that it's my student who killed Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, but before this, my student had always been with us at the Treasures Exchange Hall, so she had no time to commit the crime. The man said expressionlessly, his voice was calm. The person who spoke was Gui Wu. The moment he spoke, it made one forget about his young appearance. Even the Grand Judicial Elder, after hearing Gui Wu's words, pursed his lips tightly, not daring to reply easily. His gaze rested on Gui Wu as he continued to probe his identity. Right. Old man Wu is right. I can also be a witness. The Imperial Lady had been gathering treasures with us all this time. How could she have gone off to kill the Empyrean Fairy? Could it be that she has a doppelganger technique? Lao Lai immediately echoed. May I know your name? The great judge did not directly answer Gui Wu in Old Lai's words. Instead, he vigilantly sized up Gui Wu and asked. Gui Wu indifferently spat out two words, Gui Wu. The grand judge frowned. She had never heard of this name before. However, the aura coming from this person's body was too terrifying. Even she was a little afraid of his majesty. This man was definitely not what he appeared to be. Who was he? The grand judge furrowed his brows. Before being clear of Gui Wu's true identity, she didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. However, the great judge had neglected the fact that she had two Hall Masters by her side. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu saw that they were about to bring Yiqing Luo back to Linglong Hall. As long as Yiqing Luo entered Linglong Palace, they were in their territory. Wasn't he still at their mercy? But a young man who looked to be in his 20s stepped in. How could they tolerate this? Chapter 4093. Hall Master Ji sneered at Gui Wu. You are Yiqing Luo's men, so naturally you will help her. You can't be witnesses. Hall Master Lu blinked her eyes adorably, but under that Lolita face was a vicious look. Moreover, so what if Yi Qing Luo was really gathering treasures at that time? Don't tell me that you're still able to keep an eye on her at all times? Old Lai was about to say that Yi Qing Luo was indeed with them right from the start. But when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he suddenly thought of something as he stopped his mouth. After the overlord left, they had indeed been gathering treasures and had never been separated. Later on, Yi Qing Luo went to the warehouse alone to tidy up her things. Later on, they sensed an extremely sinister aura. They followed the aura and rushed over. In a small alley not far from the treasures gathering, they saw Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo went to meet the impostor of the overlord at that time. He naturally believed that Yi Qing Luo indeed went to meet the impostor of the overlord during that period of time. But these people might not believe it. Especially if he really insisted that Yi Qing Luo had indeed not acted alone when they were at the Treasures Exchange Hall. If Ling Long Palace grasped this point and insisted that Yi Qing Luo was the real murderer, by then they would not be able to explain it clearly. Old Lai managed to stop his words in time. This made Hall Master Ji frown. Yi Qing Luo didn't miss this slight change in expression. She was silently praising Old Lai's quick-wittedness in her heart. The two Hall Masters were obviously singing the same tune, intentionally leading them to say a fake testimony for Yi Qing Luo. In this way, they would have enough reason to bite on Yi Qing Luo and not let go. In this way, Ling Long Palace's people knew that she had been alone in the middle of the journey? Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she fell into deep thoughts. The two Hall Masters saw that Old Lai wasn't fooled and impulsively followed their plan, saying that Yi Qing Luo had never been alone. Hall Master Lu's expression changed slightly, but she quickly adjusted her emotions and continued, "Why? You can't say anything? In this way you didn't keep your eyes on Yi Qing Luo from the start, so how can you prove for her?" As she spoke, she looked at Gui Wu with a meaningful gaze. The two Hall Masters were singing a duet. The Grand Judge did not speak. His gaze was fixed on Gui Wu. It was as if he was using the two Hall Masters to probe Gui Wu's identity and bottom line. Clearly he had already treated these two Hall Masters as useless chess pieces. Once it was over, these two useless chess pieces were about to be dealt with. However, the two useless chess pieces did not feel that their future had been decided. Seeing that the Grand Judge didn't stop him, he felt even more pleased with himself. He continued, "You can't prove it, but I have a witness." Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu exchanged glances as they sneered. "Yi Qing Luo, you dare to say that, before we went to the Treasures Exchange Hall you didn't go out alone?" Yi Qing Luo's eyes suddenly sunk. In her mind, a face that was exactly the same as Diamo Xian's, but the expression was gentle like the wind. The Palace Master of the Gloomy Palace. Before the people from the Linglong Palace found the treasure-gathering hall, she had chased after him alone because of the appearance of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. How did the people from Linglong Palace know about it? Could it be this was his motive? He intentionally lured her to leave the Treasures Exchange Hall alone, and then delay the time as evidence. Chapter 4094. She had been feeling strange. That palace lord specially lured her out of the treasure gathering and said a bunch of ridiculous words. What was it for? She didn't believe it. On the surface, the palace master had fallen in love with her and had come to confess, and so on and so forth. As expected, it turned out that his goal was for this scene. She had indeed left the treasure gathering alone. But she couldn't say that she left the treasure gathering alone to meet that impostor. Mu Qiulan's dying words. She had finally managed to wash Diamo Xian and the impostor's name clean. It was also Mu Qiulan who had personally confirmed that the person who had been pestering her was the impostor. If she were to say that she had met the impostor in private, she was afraid. Once the public opinion was formed, everyone would misunderstand that the impostor was really a trick that she had come up with. The motive was to smear Mu Qiulan's name and ruin Diamo Xian's reputation out of jealousy. By then she and Diamo Xian would be blamed by many in the dark. She couldn't say it. Yi Qing Luo's eyes slowly sunk. "Isn't Miss Yi very eloquent? Why aren't you saying anything? Is this a tacit agreement?" Hall Master Ji's fiery red lips opened into a wide arc, smiling extremely complacently. Hall Master Lu blinked his adorable big eyes, putting on an innocent look as he smiled adorably at Gui Wu. "This master, it's not that we don't want to give you a chance to testify. As long as you can show us the evidence that Yiqing Luo was alone and had never come to the Qiao residence, we will believe her. Their expressions sunk. Hall Master Lu's meaning was very obvious. Linglong Palace totally knew who Yiqing Luo had met alone along the way. They intentionally didn't say it. They wanted Yiqing Luo to admit it personally. Otherwise, she could only take the blame. But the moment she admitted it, this matter would implicate the impostor and DMO Xian. The scheme was really one ring after another. In order to scheme against her, Secluded Palace and Linglong Palace were really going all out. For now, they could confirm one thing. Linglong Palace had something to do with Secluded Palace. Whether it was a cooperative relationship or a subordinate relationship, he had to investigate this carefully. Miss Yi, you've seen the scene. Now your friends are unable to produce any evidence to prove your innocence. Now, can you follow me to the Linglong Palace? Seeing that Gui Wu didn't utter a single word after hearing the two hall masters' words, the great judicial magistrate felt relieved. As long as Gui Wu did not interfere, Yiqing Luo, she would definitely be able to bring her away. Lao Lai and the others had yet to express their opinions. The girl's clear and melodious voice rang out. Didn't I say long ago that it's normal for you to suspect me? That's why I'm very willing to cooperate with your investigation. I hope that you can prove my innocence. She looked at the great judge with a smile. Her eyes curled up into an arc, revealing a hint of slyness. But you guys kept talking non-stop. I didn't want to interrupt your performance. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu were so infuriated by Yiqing Luo's casual words that their faces started to tremble. It turned out that the both of them were singing the same tune, intentionally scheming against Yiqing Luo. In Yiqing Luo's eyes, it was just a show? Was he messing with them? Hall Masters Ji and Lu were furious. Chapter 4095. The Grand Judge stared at Yiqing Luo for a long time. His eyes were full of probing. But he was totally unable to see through what Yiqing Luo was thinking about. To avoid unnecessary complications, the Grand Judge no longer hesitated and said in a deep voice, "Since Miss Yi is so cooperative, then, return to the Linglong Hall immediately." This time Gui Wu did not open his mouth to dissuade him. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Yiqing Luo followed the Linglong Palace's group and left in a grandiose manner. Mu Qiulan's corpse was also carried back to the Linglong Palace by a disciple of the Linglong Palace. The Linglong Palace was the most powerful force in the Earth domain. Naturally, he had his own branch palace in each of the three main cities. This great justice was the elder in charge of Without Embroiling City's branch palaces. But this time, the Grand Magistrate obviously had no intention of bringing Yiqing Luo back to the Exquisite Palace's branch in Without Embroiling City. Instead, he brought them directly to the headquarters of the Linglong Palace. After being taken out of Without Embroiling City's gates, Yiqing Luo was invited to board the Grand Judge's carriage. The carriage was sealed tightly and the light was very dim. It was likely that he did not want her to know the route of the carriage. Yiqing Luo didn't mind at all. Not to mention the fact that she was able to draw a map in her mind based on the path of the carriage. Even though she didn't spend much effort to remember the route, she wasn't worried. Because, from the moment he left with the great judge, Yiqing Luo's fingers swept across the profound phoenix ring on her fingertip. He activated the connection between the profound phoenix ring and the profound dragon ring. No matter where she was in the land. Even the Netherworld dragon ring could track her by following the Netherworld phoenix ring's aura. Nestled in the carriage, Yiqing Luo was bored out of her mind as she raised her eyes and stared at the Grand Judge who was sitting by the side with his eyes closed. The light in the carriage was dim. The Grand Judge's face darkened. However, one could tell that the Great Judge must have been a stunning beauty when she was young. Speaking of which, the Grand Court of Justice only had around 30 or so members at most. He looked very young. His appearance was also very eye-catching. It was just that he was always in a high position, and he lived in a place like the Linglong Palace that was plagued by women. His entire body was shrouded in a layer of sinister aura. Perhaps her gaze was too scorching. The Grand Judge frowned and opened his eyes to look at her. Yiqing Luo didn't avert her gaze as her expression was very calm. "What are you looking at?" In the darkness, the Great Judge's voice was cold. Yiqing Luo stared at her smilingly. "Because you look good." The Grand Judge's expression changed slightly. He didn't look as happy as a woman after being praised. "What tricks are you playing? Tsk, why can't you let me praise someone?" Yiqing Luo propped her chin as she blinked her charming eyes, putting on an innocent look. The surroundings are filled with your Ling Long Palace's people. Are you still afraid that I can stir up any waves? The Grand Judge snorted coldly. Who doesn't know that you, Miss Yi, are full of tricks? You're so young but you're so cunning. I fell into your trap. Yi Qing Luo made a tisk sound again. These words were told to you by your two hall masters. The Grand Inquisitor pursed his lips and did not answer. It was a tacit agreement. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes again. No matter what, I'm their savior. How could you make me out like this? It's too hurtful. As she spoke, she pressed her chest and sighed softly. The Grand Judge's eyes flickered. In the flickering carriage it was not obvious. Chapter 4096. Yi Qing Luo chuckled. Why don't you let me guess? How did those two hall masters tell you about me? She moved her body and leaned against the back of the chair lazily. Her half-squinted eyes curled into a mocking arc. She said, At the auction in Without Embroiling City, they tried their best to protect Without Embroiling City? The Grand Judge's eyes shifted back to Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo continued, They tried their best to protect Without Embroiling City's mysterious maiden, the daughter of the Qiao family. Then, she paused and smiled even more, killed by me. Not only killed but also destroyed the evidence. They couldn't save Without Embroiling City's mysterious maiden. Is that so? What do you mean by this? The Grand Judge frowned. Although what Yi Qing Luo said was slightly exaggerated. But it was almost the same as what the two hall masters said. A Mu Qilan, because of a jade pendant, you suspect me, and the Grand Judge's attitude towards me is obviously hostile. Yi Qing Luo touched her chin as she gave a light smile. There's definitely a precondition, so you didn't hesitate at all to affirm that it's me. What are you trying to say? The more the Grand Judge listened, the tighter his brows knitted. Trying to sow discord? Yi Qing Luo shook her head with a smile. In the dim carriage, the light was very dim, but the young lady's smile was still blooming like a flower, gorgeous beyond compare. We don't know how far this Linglong Palace will take. If we don't chat for a while, it'll be so boring. A trace of ridicule flashed past her eyes. If the Grand Judge thinks I'm trying to sow discord, just treat it as a joke, forget about it after hearing it. She would say these words to the Grand Judge. That was because Yi Qing Luo had not detected any trace of evil qi from the Grand Judge. And the two hall masters deliberately concealed what happened in Without Embroiling City that day. At least it could prove that there was no relationship between the Grand Judge and Secluded Palace. Yi Qing Luo also knew that. The reason why the two hall masters dared to lie to the Grand Judge, pushing Qiao Yulu's death to her. But it was to take advantage of the Grand Judge and the upper echelons of Linglong Palace. Such a big thing like the auction. The entire Earth domain suffered such a huge loss. Any random person would be able to find out the truth. But the people of the Linglong Palace had always thought highly of themselves and did not even bother to ask others. That was why Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu dared to push Qiao Yulu's death onto Yi Qing Luo. He didn't mention it at all. How much effort had Yi Qing Luo and the rest expended before they managed to spoil the plans of the Palace of Seclusion, saving the Earth domain? The ridicule in Yi Qing Luo's eyes deepened by several notches. She suddenly moved closer to the Grand Inquisitor. The magistrate was startled and was about to attack Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo turned sideways slightly to avoid it and didn't go any nearer. Just like that, she looked at the Grand Judge with a faint smile and said in a low voice, If the Grand Judge doesn't believe me, you can go and ask the people in the outside world. On the day of the auction, what did your Without Embroiling City's profound fairy do? And who is to blame for her death? The Grand Judge's pupils dilated slightly as his brows creased slightly. Yi Qing Luo pulled the distance between the two of them and sat back on her seat. If by then you still feel that Without Embroiling City's profound fairy's death is because of me, then I have nothing to say. Chapter 4097. But he had to admit it. Her heart was shaken by Yi Qing Luo's words. After all, she was indeed disappointed with Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu's actions. Furthermore, the hatred these two had towards Yi Qing Luo was too obvious. For some unknown reason, the thoughts of what Yi Qing Luo had said in the Qiao residence in the room where Mu Qilan died surfaced in his mind. If someone really framed me, then your Linglong Palace is just a pawn in their hands. Chess piece. Could it be that the Linglong Palace had really been used as a chess piece to deal with Yi Qing Luo? No, to say it was to deal with Yi Qing Luo, it would be more accurate to say it was to contain Yi Qing Luo. After all, the powerhouse behind Yi Qing Luo wasn't just the Hell Palace, There was also the Qiao family from the Earth domain, and her biggest backing, the Imperial Palace. She was Di Zun's woman. If the Linglong Palace Hall really did something outrageous, they would definitely be killed. The Overlord would definitely not let the Linglong Palace off, no matter how high the status of the Linglong Palace was in the land. But, if the Overlord really wanted to use his full strength, the Linglong Palace would not be able to withstand it. For the Great Justice to be able to reach his current position in the Linglong Palace, he naturally had some brains. Although on the surface he was unmoved by Yi Qing Luo's words. But in his heart, he had more or less taken Yi Qing Luo's words to heart. About an hour or so later, the carriage finally came to a slow stop. The curtains of the carriage were pulled open. A ray of light shone in. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes, and after she adapted to the light, she walked out of the carriage. What entered his eyes was a tall and majestic building that resembled an ancient castle. It occupied a large area. It was comparable to the Imperial Palace which Yi Qing Luo had seen in Nirvana Realm. The buildings around the castle were engraved with ancient and complicated totems. He looked very dignified and noble. On the outskirts of the ancient castle, more than a dozen Linglong Palace's disciples dressed in lotus-green robes were patrolling back and forth. Welcoming them were a few older women who walked out of the castle. The women's robes were similar to the disciples' robes. However, compared to ordinary disciples, their embroidery patterns were much more exquisite. From the looks of it, he should be someone with some status in the Linglong Palace. However, when they looked at the Grand Judicial Elder, their faces were filled with respect. "Welcome back, Grand Judicial Elder." The Grand Judge waved his hand and glanced sideways at Yi Qing Luo's direction before saying, "Shadowless City's mysterious maiden is dead and her corpse has been transported back. Is the Hall Master in the hall?" The women were shocked. Why is the Empyrean maiden of Shadowless City dead? The three mysterious fairies have only left the palace of Linglong for such a short time, and two of them have already died. Could it be that someone is targeting the palace of Linglong? The few ladies' gazes turned towards Yi Qing Luo in unison. "Grand Judicial Elder, this is... She is the murderer who killed two of our Linglong Palace's mysterious maiden. We specially brought her back to the Linglong Palace because we want Palace Master to seek justice for the profound fairies." A slender figure jumped out of the other carriage. Hall Master Lu and Hall Master Ji alighted from the carriage. The few ladies' expressions had a huge change as the way they looked at Yi Qing Luo had a subtle change. "Everything has yet to be decided. Send Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's corpse to Shadowless Hall for an inspection first. I will bring her to see the Hall Master." The Grand Judicial Elder shot a glance at the two Hall Masters as he spoke calmly. Chapter 4098. Grand Judicial Elder, have you been deceived by that woman? Hall Master Ji's first reaction was what Yi Qing Luo had said to the Grand Judicial Elder when they were alone in the carriage. The Grand Judicial Elder glanced at her indifferently. Hall Master Ji seems to be especially concerned about Miss Ye's matters. Hall Master Ji's expression stiffened as she lowered her head. I'm just worried that she's so sinister and cunning that the Grand Judicial Elder would be cheated by her." The Grand Judicial Elder walked straight into the ancient castle indifferently. "This matter, I have my own plans, there's no need for you to say anything more." Hall Master Ji heard the Grand Judicial Elder's indifference and could only shut his mouth as he followed behind the Grand Judicial Elder. A group of people clustered together as they entered the Linglong Palace. The ancient castle was brightly lit and the luminous pearls were hung high up, extremely dazzling. Moreover, the design and decoration were elegant and dignified. After they entered the Linglong Palace, the few ladies who welcomed the Grand Judicial Elder spoke out. "Grand Judicial Elder, the Hall Master is not in the hall now." The Grand Judicial Elder's footsteps paused as he made a quick turn and headed towards another direction. "Then bring her to the judicial courtyard first, I will take care of her personally." The group of people headed towards the direction of the judicial courtyard. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu exchanged glances and were about to follow up. The Grand Judicial Elder suddenly looked at a lady beside him. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu are out and borrowing the reputation of the Linglong Palace to flaunt their prowess, ruining the reputation of the Linglong Palace. Lock them up first and wait for the Hall Master to return before we deal with them. Yes. The lady replied respectfully. Following that, the two female disciples held Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu in their hands. The two of them struggled for a moment as their expressions turned extremely ugly. "Grand Judicial Elder, what do you mean by this? When did we ruin the reputation of the Linglong Palace?" Grand Judicial Elder, don't tell me you've really been bewitched by that demoness? The two of them kept shouting. But the Grand Judicial Elder didn't even bother about them. Bringing Yiqing Luo, he disappeared around the corner. The two hall masters were flustered and exasperated but didn't dare to struggle as they obediently allowed the female disciples to bring them to the dungeon. Yiqing Luo followed by the Grand Judge's side, looking left and right with a satisfied expression. Do you think that I taught them a lesson because of your provocation? The Grand Judge glanced at her expressionlessly. Yiqing Luo put on an innocent look. The judicial system has long been dissatisfied with Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu, and had long wanted to give up on the both of them. What has this got to do with me? The Grand Judge snorted coldly and didn't speak again. After sending the man to the judicial court, the Great Justice had arranged for many female disciples of the Linglong Palace to stand guard outside the courtyard. He then warned Yiqing Luo repeatedly not to play any tricks. He left in a hurry. Towards a stranger like Yiqing Luo, the Linglong Palace's female disciples were extremely curious. But he didn't ask. Just like that, Yiqing Luo was locked in an elegant guest room, not allowed to step out of the room. Yiqing Luo felt that the Great Justice had purposely arranged this. Did he want her to receive the same treatment as Mu Qiulan? The chief judicial officer had either left to look for the palace master of the Linglong Palace, or to ask her about what she had said in the carriage. Yiqing Luo wasn't anxious at all. She laid quietly on the bed, crossing her legs, and had no intention to escape from the room, just as she was locked in the room for about 1 hour. Chapter 4099. The room was silent. The surroundings were silent. This was Linglong Palace's turf. The surroundings were guarded by Linglong Palace's disciples. Who could it be? Who could get close to this room without a trace? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she vigilantly released her perception, sensing everything around her. In the air, the floating presence was very weak. If she didn't sense it carefully, she probably wouldn't be able to detect the presence of a second person in this room. Since you're here, why hide your head and show your tail? Yiqing Luo spoke coldly with a solemn expression. She sat by the side of the bed, not heading towards the direction of her senses. Her eyes stared at that direction without blinking. After several breaths of silence, a black figure slowly entered her sight. That figure was tall and his footsteps were light and slow. He walked over. He stopped by the side of the bed, 5 steps away from her. His entire body was shrouded in a black robe concealing his face. Faintly, a pair of cold and dignified eyes could be seen. His entire body was emitting an extremely powerful oppressive aura. He looked mysterious, powerful and unfathomable. After Yiqing Luo saw the person in front of her clearly, the solemn expression on her face froze. Her lips curled slightly as she gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace, I didn't expect to be you. The person in front of her was not anyone else, but the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. To think that he would actually appear here. This was Linglong Palace. He just snuck in silently like this. Was he overly confident that he wouldn't be detected by Linglong Palace's people? Or he had long formed a cooperative relationship with Linglong Palace, so he could move around freely in this Linglong Palace? Yiqing Luo? Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace gazed deeply at her face as his voice sounded a little hoarse. The current him no longer appeared as DMO Xian. That voice carried a very heavy layer. It sounded like a machine, blurring the original tone of his voice. It sounded extremely strange. What's the matter? Yiqing Luo asked coldly. Sorry. He sighed softly as he apologized helplessly. I didn't know that because of me you would fall into this deadlock. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Didn't know? Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace, what are you trying to express? She tilted her head as she teased. Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace? Could it be that Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace really likes me? After setting me up, you came to me with all kinds of explanations. Oh, I didn't know, I didn't do it on purpose, I really didn't know anything. Did I foolishly believe you, Palace Master of the Nether Palace? The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace suddenly raised his head. His eyes under the black robe were fixed on her. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to explain it. I really don't know anything about this. What I said to you was from the bottom of my heart. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace said helplessly in the end. After a pause, he lowered his head, and his voice became suppressed. Regardless of whether you believe me or not, I still want to explain it to you clearly. Lord, Qin Palace, Ling, Palace, Lord, Ling, Long Ling Palace, Long Palace, Palace Palace. Palace Lord of Seclusion. Palace's eyes under the black robe shut tightly, not willing to look at the young lady's mocking gaze. He really didn't expect this. How could things be so coincidental? So coincidental that everything seemed to have been arranged long ago. Chapter 4100. He was able to leave the secluded palace quietly under his master's eyelids and meet Yiqing Luo. All these were actually all arranged by his master. He was just a chess piece which was used by his master. He thought that it was because his ability was strong enough so his master didn't detect his abnormality. Actually, all these were all planned and arranged by his master. Secluded Palace Lord's heart was filled with guilt because of his own self-righteousness, causing Yiqing Luo to be unable to explain clearly that when Mu Qilan died, she was with him, to a place like Linglong Palace. If master wanted to deal with her, her situation would probably be very dangerous. Thinking of this, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace clenched his fists tightly, as though he had made up his mind. Yiqing Luo, as long as you explain clearly that when Mu Qilan died, you were with me, then Linglong Palace has no right to imprison you here. He looked at Yiqing Luo, and under the black robe, his eyes could be seen faintly, revealing an earnest expression. I'll go explain clearly to the Lord of Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo didn't reply but raised her slender brows with a smile which didn't look like a smile, as she crossed her arms and smiled at him. Secluded Palace Lord's body turned stiff. You don't believe me? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly and her smile was filled with ridicule. You think I'm saying this to you on purpose, right? The Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace suddenly laughed. That low, hoarse and mechanical heavy metal voice. When he laughed, it was extremely ear-piercing. It was like a sawtooth scraping heavily in the eardrums. He was laughing. Yiqing Luo was laughing too. Only the meaning of their smiles were totally different. One ridiculed. Another was bitter. It wasn't that Yiqing Luo didn't hear the bitterness in his laughter, but she didn't take it seriously. Her lips curled as the corners of her lips curled into a faint smile. Yes, I indeed don't believe you. The tall figure of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace bent down slightly. It was as if something was pressing heavily on his body, making him unable to straighten his back. Pain and bitterness encircled his entire body. She really didn't believe him. She really thought that he was just trying to gain her favor by saying those words. In Yiqing Luo's heart. He really wasn't anything. Yiqing Luo fixed her gaze on the man in front of her. There wasn't a single trace of emotion in her eyes and her expression was extremely calm. Regardless of whether what you said is true or false, I actually don't care. You and I are not the same kind of people. It doesn't matter whether I believe you or not. The so-called feelings you have for me, no matter if it's real or fake, do not need a result because there will never be a result in the first place. Every word was clear and decisive. To the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. They were enemies to begin with. Even without Dmo Xian's existence, there would be no result between them. Right from the start, Yiqing Luo didn't have any extra feelings towards him. At most, he would only remember that he had once told Dmo Xian the place where she was locked up, allowing Dmo Xian to save her in time. That was just a favor. There was nothing else. The chest of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace heaved. The surroundings were overflowing with black qi. His hoarse laughter was filled with bitterness. You're really heartless. But my heart just can't make me give up on you. His black robe fluttered, like the ink-stained clouds, slowly dispersing. Chapter 4101. His hoarse voice drifted through the air. This matter is my fault. I'll think of a way to clear your name and also clear my name without affecting you. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. His gaze slowly shifted to the direction where the man had disappeared. A stretch of nothingness. Only the vaguely floating yin qi in the air proved that he had indeed been here. To clear her name, she understood what he meant. He wanted to help her prove that she was not Mu Qilan's murderer. However, what the hell was this about clearing his name? He wanted to clear his name. This time, she was lured out of the treasure house by him to meet him alone, and this was used as evidence of Mu Qilan's murder. Did he really not know anything and was innocent? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. His emotions were very faint. Actually, it really didn't matter if he was innocent or not. For her. After all, he was just a stranger. There were no other strange auras in the surroundings. Yiqing Luo then returned to the bedside. As soon as he sat down, a few ladies' respectful greetings came from outside the door. Mysterious Lady of Yen. Immediately after, the woman's angry voice could be heard. Get out of the way. Please calm down, Mysterious Lady of Yen. The Grand Judicial Elder has ordered that no one is allowed to enter this room. The woman guarding the door answered respectfully. Nonsense. The woman pushed him to the side. I clearly sensed his aura. It's here. Him? The gatekeeper was a bit confused. The Grand Elder of the Judiciary only brought a woman and placed her in this room. There's no one else. I'll know if there's anyone else in there. The woman said as she forcefully pushed the door open. Yiqing Luo heard the commotion outside and the creaking sound of her room door being pushed. Her but hadn't even warmed up yet? She had only been in Linglong Palace Hall for a short while. So lively already? One after another? Couldn't he let her have a good rest? Later on, he still had to brace himself to deal with the legendary palace master of Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo was cursing silently when the room's door was forcefully pushed and obstructed by that lady and the female gatekeeper. Under such repeated actions, a pa sound was heard and the wooden door directly collapsed. Soon after, a slender figure strode in. The woman was dressed in a deep blue embroidered dress with a peony pattern. She looked extremely youthful and beautiful. Her facial features were regular, and she could be considered a beauty. A pair of mischievous and quick-witted eyes were searching for something in the surroundings. Yiqing Luo saw a sliver of cautiousness and anticipation on the lady's face. Anticipation? What did this woman hope to find in the room where she was imprisoned? It seemed like, did this woman just say, him? Did he sense his aura? This he, does it refer to, the palace master of the Palace of Darkness? Just now, he was the only one who had appeared in her room. After a round of searching, the woman did not find the person she was looking for. His face immediately darkened. She bit her lower lip hard, her face showing a bit of grievance. Where did you hide him? The lady directly pointed the spearhead towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo? The woman's vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. Her face instantly frowned into a bundle. That pair of quick-witted eyes flashed past a tinge of treachery and jealousy. You are that woman who killed Mu Qiulan and Xiao Yulu? Chapter 4102. It really is you. A hint of hostility surfaced in the depths of the woman's eyes. What's your relationship with Brother Gong? Facing this young lady's inexplicable hostility and baffling question, Yiqing Luo asked, Miss, who are you? The woman's face stiffened and she pursed her red lips. I'm Wu Fu-er, the mystic maiden of Winterless City. You've killed 2 mystic maidens of the main cities. Are you going to kill me next? Since you know, why are you still trying to get close to me? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Mystic maiden Wu Fu-er's face darkened. The 2 of them were stupid, that's why they were killed by you. But I'm different. If you dare touch me, the people of Linglong Palace will not let you off. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she looked at the lady who was clamoring in front of her. This Linglong Palace Hall really knows how to pick their Empyrean maiden. 3 Empyrean fairies from the main cities. Her appearance could be considered top-notch. And their styles were different. Xiao Yulu was the unattainable type of fairy. Mu Qiulan, on the other hand, was the mature and cool type. Wu Fu-er was the spoiled and mischievous type. These 3 Empyrean fairies had different appearances and styles. However, the 3 of them had one thing in common. That was the attitude of thinking too highly of oneself. Compared to the other 2, the Empyrean maiden of Smokeless City was clearly more arrogant and overbearing. Yiqing Luo, you'd better be obedient in Linglong Palace's territory. Wu Fu-er saw that Yiqing Luo wasn't intimidated by her at all, and even looked at her with that ridiculing expression. A ball of fury surged in her heart. Her face darkened, and her eyes swept around the room again. Tell me, was Brother Gong here just now? Brother Gong? The palace master of Gloomy Palace was surnamed Gong? Looking at Wu Fu-er's concerned attitude, could it be, Wu Fu-er must have secretly fallen in love with the palace master of the Palace of Tenebrous Palace. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was really lucky with women. He slept with Mu Qiulan. Now he had Wu Fu-er on top of that. Both of them were peerless beauties. So, what he said about liking her, and so on could not be taken seriously. The palace master of Netherworld Palace, whose sincerity was once again implicated for no reason. What are you laughing at? Wu Fuer's eyebrows creased tightly as she stretched out her hand to push Yiqing Luo. I'm asking you a question, can't you hear me? Her hand had yet to reach Yiqing Luo. A sharp pain came from his arm. She let out a blood-curdling scream. Her wrist was grasped by two white and slender fingers in a seemingly nimble manner. He wanted to struggle. However, those two fingers were like boulders, not moving at all. She almost broke the bones in her hand. You dare. Wu Fuer's face was pale from the pain, and cold sweat beaded on her forehead. The waves of pain seemed to emanate from his bones. Yiqing Luo forcefully flung Wu Fuer's hand away as her lips curled into a cold sneer. Be careful, don't get touchy, I don't know how to be gentle with the fairer sex. You. Wu Fuer's face was extremely pale as she held onto her wrist as her eyes turned red from the pain. Even though Yiqing Luo had let go, she still felt waves of intense pain coming from her bones. Mysterious Lady Yen. When the ladies outside the door saw that, all of them rushed in with a terrified expression. The female guards' expressions were filled with terror. Mysterious Lady Yen, are you all right? Chapter 4103. Hearing Wu Fuer's order, Wu Fuer's eyes widened. The female gatekeepers looked at each other. For a moment he could not make up his mind. After all, Yiqing Luo was brought back by the Grand Magistrate. They only asked them to look after Yiqing Luo and not allow her to leave the room. There was no need to interfere with anything else. But they did not dare to disobey the orders of the mysterious Lady of Yama. On one side was Yan Zuanf and on the other side was the Great Justice. This put them in an extremely difficult position. The female gatekeepers did not move. To Wu Fuer, this was akin to giving Yiqing Luo a tight slap on her face. Immediately her face darkened. Are you all dead? Can't you hear me? The female gatekeepers hesitated. After weighing the pros and cons, they still flocked towards Yiqing Luo. 10 over-ladies immediately surrounded Yiqing Luo. One of the women advised in a low voice, Miss Yi Yanxuanu is the granddaughter of our Wu Yan Hall's Wu Yan Hall master. If you want to be safe and sound in Ling Long Hall, you better apologize to Yanxuanu and give in, granddaughter? This Wu Fuer was actually someone from the Ling Long Palace? She had thought that the 3 Empyrean fairies of the Earth Realm were chosen by the major forces and families of the 3 main cities. It was no wonder that Wu Fuer's temper and arrogance were so much more flamboyant than the other 2 Empyrean fairies. As it turned out, their backer was the Ling Long Palace Hall. The few ladies took action at the same time and were about to seize Yiqing Luo. Ah! Several screams rang out. Wu Fuer's smug smile froze on her face. In his ears there were screams. Following that, many lotus green figures flew backward and crashed into her. Yiqing Luo. Wu Fuer's expression darkened. She stomped on the ground and flew into the air. Those Ling Long Palace's disciples who were sent flying, all fell to the ground. Wu Fuer didn't even look at those people. Her 5 fingers formed into claws and turned into sharp blades. They were like fine iron and cold ice, reflecting a piercingly cold light. Her figure moved and she had already overtaken Yiqing Luo. His attack was filled with killing intent. It was obvious that he was furious. The violent and sharp profound light was filled with killing intent. Damn Yiqing Luo. How dare he be so arrogant? She had been slapped in the face again and again, making her lose face. He would let her know the consequences of being arrogant. The falling profound rays and the attack which was filled with murderous intent made Yiqing Luo's slender brows rise again. Wu Fuer was slightly more powerful than the other 2 mysterious fairies. The claw came down. It carried a majestic and thick profound energy. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo's quick reaction, this claw could probably leave a huge hole in a person's body. Yiqing Luo took half a step back, her fingertips moved slightly and the enchanting red light in her hand swept out in an alluring arc. It was like a blazing flame, burning brightly. In an instant he blocked Wu Fuer's sharp claws. Wu Fuer was shaken by the Shen energy. The expression on his face became more and more sinister. Her delicate little face became ferocious. All right. Good job. This was the first time that Wu Fuer, who was used to being domineering in the Ling Long Hall, had been given the cold shoulder. She had not expected Yiqing Luo's guts to be so unyielding, totally not playing her cards according to the norm. The moment he made his move, she had no way out. If she retreated, she would be unwilling. Moreover, her reputation would be swept away. Thinking of this, the expression on Wu Fuer's face became even more vicious. That pair of lively big eyes were filled with a bloodthirsty ferocious beast, overflowing with a vicious aura. Since Yiqing Luo was looking for death. Chapter 4104. The female disciples of the Linglong Palace, who had been blasted out of their rooms and were lying on the ground, looked at the scene before them anxiously. The maid who had followed Wu Fuer left quietly and ran towards the direction of the judicial courtyard. Wu Fuer's attacks were swift and violent. Every single move was filled with murderous intent, and it became more and more ferocious. It was totally different from her appearance. Yiqing Luo had already seen through Wu Fuer's attacks after exchanging a few blows with her, and because of that, just as Wu Fuer attacked again, Yiqing Luo had already made use of her skills to break all her attacks and forced her to retreat several steps. Wu Fuer's face turned slightly pale. Her chest was heaving up and down due to her heavy breathing. A pair of sinister eyes, like a poisonous snake, stared venomously at Yiqing Luo. "Do you still want to fight?" Yiqing Luo smiled at Wu Fuer with a relaxed expression, as though she wasn't affected by Wu Fuer at all. This was the Linglong Palace after all. It wasn't her turf. Yiqing Luo had no intention to kill. She wanted to make a move to warn the others in case a bunch of boorish people popped in every few days in the Linglong Palace. She didn't have the time to deal with them. Wu Fuer only felt that this smile was to humiliate and ridicule her. Her facial features became even more twisted. "Slut." She took a deep breath and her profound energy burst forth once again as she charged towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as a mocking smile appeared on her face. Her hands moved. The glower flame fan on her fingertips opened up. The coquettish profound light turned into a huge dragon as it bared its fangs and brandished its claws towards Wu Fuer. The rich red light flickered continuously. The biting cold and violent profound light whistled in the air. "Stop." Suddenly a loud shout was heard. Following that, Yiqing Luo felt a huge pressure descending from the sky. Almost at the same instant that the terrifying aura attacked him, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Yiqing Luo's fingers retracted. She quickly gathered all her profound energy around her body and formed an enchantment barrier. Her footwork moved and her body moved swiftly. At the same time, bam bam bam. Deafening explosions and explosions resounded throughout the place. Yiqing Luo's front foot had just left. The entire house collapsed with a loud bang. The profound light vibrated, and the remaining power caused ripples to appear in the air. Such powerful strength, Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated slightly. He was panting a little. Fortunately, she reacted quickly enough. He managed to dodge the sudden attack in time. "How dare you behave so atrociously in the Linglong Palace?" His deep voice was filled with profound energy. Every single word was like a blow to one's eardrum, falling heavily into one's heart. Yiqing Luo finally stabilized her footsteps and had yet to see clearly who the person who suddenly appeared was. Then a green whirlwind, like a piercingly cold sharp blade, cut through the sky and chopped down. The huge green light blade was like a mark falling from the sky. Yiqing Luo suppressed the shock in her heart and swiftly took a few steps back. He quickly raised his arm, and the devouring flame fan burst into a blazing red light, blocking the green light blade. When the glowing flame fan collided with the sharp blade, Yiqing Luo only felt a numbness in her arm. Her body was forced to take another step back by this majestic aura. The huge pressure hit her in an instant. Yiqing Luo's face turned slightly pale, and there was a dull pain in her chest. She pursed her lips tightly, suppressing this uncomfortable feeling, and circulated the profound energy in her body, trying to contend against this force. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.